fans, and welcome back to Phase 2 of the SMITE Pro League, powered by our good friends over at Prime Gaming. If you missed out on that trailer, make sure that you check out all the cool things that Prime Gaming has to offer to you, from the free games that you haven't maybe played at this point, or exclusive content for the games that you are already playing. Make sure that you link your Prime membership with your Twitch account, so that way you can make the most of that. Get a free sub to your favorite stream as well. And if you don't already have a Prime membership, you get all kinds of great benefits with that, such as free 2-day shipping on all the stuff that you were already going to buy, and as well as getting some good music, movies, groceries, all that and more can be yours if you get a Prime membership, and then link that up to make sure that you can get the best out of your Prime Gaming membership. Thank you so much to Prime Gaming for being the title sponsor of Season 9 of the SPL. And as I said, I'm proud to present to you guys Phase 2 now of the SPL. The SMITE Masters Tournament is over. The Tartarus Titans were your Phase 1 champions, and now we'll get to see how some of the teams have adapted to themselves post-Masters meta. My name is Jim Tucker. I've got Trelly joining me on the desk. That way we can get you guys kicked off for the start of our new phase.
I mean, I watched your recap video, then you're like, the SPL won't be coming back till June 10th, and I was like, then I'm like, we're here. The SPL
that's today.
It's back. It's already June 10th, that video. It hyped me up, and then, it dragged me down, then it hyped me up, so it is time. We're here for the Camelot Kings versus the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, it's going to be our first set of the day, kind of kicking things off. It was the former #1 seed and then the former #5 seed, but both these teams going out at second and third during the Masters land during that time. So we'll get to see how they've made some of the changes. Now the 9.5 bonus patches come out, a couple of change-ups there. If you haven't already, you can go recap yourself on some of those patch notes as well. And then we're also going to have some more matches. It's not just going to be the one SPL match. We wouldn't just give you one match, obviously. No, we're going to have a couple of those matchups that are available to you guys. And we're going to take a nice little look at the schedule here in just a moment to kind of see how the day is going to go through, what you can expect for the remainder of the week. As once again, it is Phase 2 now, so everything that happened in Phase 1, well, we can't really say forget about it, because there was a lot of interesting and kind of spicy changes that we had. I mean, the Solar Scarabs and the Valkyries both only finding a single set win during their initial start of the phase. The Scarabs getting knocked out by the SCC team during the Masters event kind of brought a little bit of interest out of there, and maybe kind of brings a couple of question marks for some of these teams. Things like the Leviathans, the Scarabs, as I mentioned just prior, are teams that I think for myself I'm going to be looking towards in Phase 2 to see what kind of changes they made. But here is the full schedule available to you guys. We're going to be doing 2 sets today, the top 2 being the Kings, Dragons, the Warriors, and Levi's. The next 2 sets, the Dragons, Valks, Bolts, Scarabs, will be tomorrow. And then the final 3 at the bottom of your screen will be taking place on Sunday. So make sure that you're tuning in for all 3 days to catch up on Week 1 of the SPL.
Man, Smite Sunday is going to be packed. The Levi's versus the Titans, the Kings once again versus the Valks, and the Scarabs versus the Oni Warriors. This is going to be a very exciting weekend in Smite, but headlining that is going to be the Camelot Kings versus the Jade Dragons, and I'm extremely excited to see how the meta will shift around. Obviously, the Gilded Arrow nerf has to be brought up, right? The rise of the ADCs in not only the mid lane and the solo lane and the Dev Gauntlets nerf has certainly shifted things up for us. So I'm expecting to see, if we're taking anything from what we just saw in the SCC set prior to this, definitely a different style of meta, right? We weren't seeing so much of those ADCs in solo lane or in the mid lane. The Ulers were still banned away, but besides that, more so the burst mages are back in favor, which I think could suit both of these teams. Obviously, Pagon, not one to play too many of these burst mages. Sometimes he plays the Thought and things like that, but I think, more so looking at BMT, for example, maybe we'll see something interesting from there.
And maybe if we do see some of those, remaining metas that we had seen prior, at least during the Masters, kind of pop themselves off, maybe still seeing another kind of clashing of those play styles. The Camelot Kings were a team that were playing very traditional style of Smite, not really straying too far from kind of what they were already doing before Masters kicked off, where the Jade Dragons were a team that were running these double, triple hunter comps, these Poseidon and Hobwa jungles, kind of leaving them to be the sole magical carries for the team as opposed to everything else. So I think this first match in particular is going to be a really fun one to watch, just because we saw these 2 teams square off on the last day of Masters. The Camelot Kings were able to find a victory over the Jade Dragons. So we'll see how the Camelot Kings have been able to adjust themselves since their loss to the Titans, because as I said, they've been playing very traditional Smite, even despite a lot of the changes that have come with these patches.
Yeah, I'm a big proprietor of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And right now, if you're not the Tartarus Titans, you didn't win out that tournament, obviously, so there are some adaptations to be made here. Variety on the AMC was finding some success, but also was getting camped pretty hard, and that's sort of, that's what AMC brings, right? Not so much mobility. So I imagine we're going to see a big shakeup here. It just really depends on how they've adapted to this new style of meta, what's going to be prominent, what's not, that sort of thing.
And during the Masters, this Jing Wei pick was kind of one of the cream of the crop picks that it kind of felt like whatever team was able to get this god, especially if they were able to couple it maybe with another semi-global or global presence-based god, you kind of just got to pop off with it. I mean, Cyclone Sim was able to have some good pop-off games on the Titans. Netroid, when he was able to get his hands on it, was able to make some very stark plays with that one as well. And then obviously I got to also give some credit over to Genetics, the play that he was able to have a very standout performance amongst his team during that Masters. The Horus plays that came out in games 3 and 4, and especially in games 3, were able to turn those around and find some big victories for his team.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's what I think I'm most excited about, right? The change up of the meta, obviously, and just what sort of new strategies are going to come into fruition here. Are we going to see more so of the, objective style play where we have to, focus out these mid laners, make sure these big burst ultimates aren't available so we can pull these objectives, that sort of thing. And it's not something you can really predict, right? Meta isn't something you can predict. It's more so, it changes like the water, if you will. It flows and changes, and it's more so just, who is winning with what they're winning, and then you make your adaptation towards it.
Yeah, I mean, with all of these battles of these metas between teams trying new things throughout all the time, now that they've had give or take about a month to try and figure out kind of what the meta is. So we'll now kind of see how the dust has settled after everything has been kicked up. We'll kind of get to see a fresh look in the eyes of the SPL. We've gotten to see what some of the SCC teams have been bringing out, which a lot of kind of what they were already doing whenever we were going into the Masters LAN.
Yeah, and I think that's the the struggle of the SCC coming before the SPL, right? You don't get to watch these pros and see what they're cooking up.
Right.
You just have to, predict what you think is going to be strong, and whatever works for you is going to be what works the best. Even if the meta suggests one thing, you just say, hey, I'm really good at this character, we can make this work, that sort of thing. It's going to be an interesting style, but given the Camelot Kings are here to showcase this for us, I'm very excited because I think they've got a healthy bunch of playmakers as well as some smart brains behind them.
And one of the brains behind the Camelot Kings that we'll get to talk to kind of start this day out is the jungler for the team, Captain Twig, standing by for our pregame interview. First off, good to have you here for the pregame interview and kind of a start now to the new phase of the SPL. After you guys lost to the Titans, obviously you guys had to maybe go back to the drawing board a little bit. Now we're in a new patch, maybe a potential kind of new meta. Do you think that this new bonus patch has kind of shook things up a little bit?
A little bit. I think the meta will shift slightly away from the hunters, but we'll probably still see a few of them. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. I think dragons are always very diverse with their picks, so we'll see what happens today, basically.
Yeah. Going up against a team like the Dragons seems like just about any of their players can kind of pop off, can kind of maybe be a carry for that team. Is there anybody on your team kind of, or maybe anybody on your team looking at the opposition, kind of seeing that there's maybe a target you'll need to focus out, anything?
If anyone, it's Pagon. Making him have a bad game, I think, kind of makes the Dragons crumble. It's always kind of been like that. Like their mid laner is their kind of provider for both side lanes, right. And so if he has a bad game, they will.
Yeah, I mean, that even goes back to back in the days when you were playing with a lot of those players on there. So, well, I'll let you get back with your team. That way you can go by. Thank you so much for coming by for our pregame interview, Twig.
Thanks.
Good luck. So I think it's some good insight and something that's kind of been talked about over the lifetime of the Dragons. Now, this is the third year with a lot of the core players still sticking together, and kind of the one common thing that has been changed out has been that mid laner. And one thing that we talk a lot about the Dragons more than anything is the fact that this is a team that phase number 1, these guys always pop off. They always have a very dominant phase 1. It happened in Season 8 where they were able to completely blow through the entirety of the early, only having like their one set drop to the Scarabs and then able to dominate the phase 1 playoffs. They do the same thing. Don't quite win the phase 1 playoffs this time around, but still show that they are a pretty powerful team.
I think that was like the perfect person to have on that pregame interview, right? Someone who used to be the mid laner for this team, now back in his prized jungle role, giving us some solid insight there. Definitely, even if we didn't have that insight, I think Pagon's got to be a player to watch, right? He always has these different style of picks. Even if the meta says, hey, we're playing mages, we're playing hunters, that sort of thing, Pagon can play whatever he wants, and he's going to play it at the highest level. So you always got to keep your eyes on him, and we get to watch some of those things. You might be saying, hey, is this the jungler? No, that's Pagon playing a mid lane Susano and doing it pretty darn well.
Yeah, I feel bad for anybody who has missed any of phase 1 because it's been a very exciting phase for a lot of these teams out here. Pagon, the new mid laner for the Jade Dragons, has been having a star-studded performance, one of the best rookie performances that we've seen in some time in the SPL, but able to be really a hard carry for his team, which sometimes feels like that may have been a little bit of what the Jade Dragons had been missing prior coming into some of these other phases. Panda Cat's really been stepping up over in that dual lane as well as PBM. So really across the board, the Jade Dragons in this first phase of play have really been able to step their game up.
I still don't like that we're seeing highlight plays from Fine OK and he's on AMC, man. It's never gonna sit well with me that we're watching these hunters in the highlight reels for solo laners. We saw variety as well with a highlight play on the AMC, but that's sort of just what 9.5 was. And again, Twig highlighted it. Maybe we'll see some sort of different style picks, but also, you know what? It really just depends on what these guys are wanting to play, what they're wanting, you know, what they've been practicing and that sort of thing. But as I mentioned, Pagon on that thought, there are still some mages in the backpack that he could whip out, of course. And PBM still one of the few proprietors of this Serket in the solo or in the support role, right? We've seen her in the jungle with her changes, but still able to play a different style of pick like the Serket, get aggressive, but also he can sit back and play the Khepri and peel for his team. There's so many different play styles that the Jade Dragons have.
And I think that's maybe one of the benefits that the Jade Dragons have is because they're able to change up their playstyle so many times. They can go from being this very aggressive first 15-minute kind of roll over an enemy team kind of team comp to being able to go for these more long-winded slow burn kind of comps, get these double and triple hunters. That way they know that once the 20-25 minute rolls around, they can start shredding these objectives, have enough DPS during these team fights and whatnot. And with a lot of the change-ups throughout the map, we've seen a lot of changes specifically to the solo laners. So we got Final K standing by over for our pregame interview for the side of the Jade Dragons. First off, glad to have you here, Final K, for our new phase, the SPL. We've seen some of the changes now with the 9.5 bonus. I talked to Captain Twig a little bit earlier. He said that he thinks a little bit of a change-up. Do you see now with maybe some of the changes to some of the hunter nerfs and maybe some of the warrior buffs, we see maybe a bit of a shake-up in your lane specifically?
Not really.
No?
No, actually, I don't think so. I mean, I honestly think that the new ADC build maybe could be even better than the previous one. And I think the Glad Shield is a good warrior item, but it's only really good for characters that can actually abuse it, and that's basically just Arthur, maybe Kukulin. But yeah, for the most part, it's still really hard to punish these carry picks and these greedier picks, and the payoff for them is just a lot higher in my opinion.
You guys had a really strong start up to your first phase, able to take #1 seed. Obviously fell a little short during the Masters land, but how do you feel and with yourself and maybe kind of as the team, with your rookie mid laner in there, how do you feel about Pagon's performance and how that's kind of shaped your team in this first phase?
I'm pretty happy with where we're at, and Daniel's been a great addition to the team, not just in game but out of game as well. He's been real fun to have on the team, but also we were pretty proud with how our first phase went. Obviously, we wanted to win Masters, and we're getting a rematch against the Kings here today, so hopefully we can win that. But pretty happy with things so far, and just kind of a huge change in the meta right before the tournament. We were winning everything before that. Just won the seeding tournament and kind of, I think, played into some other teams' hands a little bit better than maybe ours. But, you just have to be the best team at adapting, and we weren't that time. But hopefully this next phase we can get things done.
Yeah, you've had a little bit of downtime to do so, so maybe this is y'all's phase, maybe this is y'all's Masters. Good luck in your matchup. I'll let you get back with the team.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming by. I think it's always important, to talk about, new change-ups in the team, new adjustments to the meta. I love how Captain was like, yeah, I think we're going to see a little bit in Final K. Like, nah, I don't think so at all. Just immediately clear cut. Just I don't think things are going to change that much.
Hey, that's my solo laner again. I drafted him once again. I don't know if did we get to see his dab before he left off. I'm not sure if the camera cut it, but
I don't know if
he did dab. So I just want everyone to know he's probably feeling pretty good. Whenever you see Final K, sending those dabs out, that's when he's going to be performing at top tier. I'm not going to be happy though if I do see an AMC locked in. I'm just going to say it right now. If I see it, it better be going to Pagon or it better be going to Panda Cat. I understand that it's just a solid pick. It gets clear, but I want to see Final K on these warriors that he's been playing so well on these hard carries. I mean, when was the last time we saw like Hercules? Remember when Final K popped off on the Herc, the double boulder off that wall? Those are the kind of plays that I want to see.
Yeah, it's always fun to see some of the flashier plays, some of kind of more of the traditional picks over in that solo lane. But as Final K alluded to, maybe at least for his team, some of that meta hasn't changed up that much. Maybe with Captain Twig, they think the meta has shifted up a little bit. So again, it's that battle of the minds. Is the traditional way of Smite going to hold up to kind of the new age of Smite? In history's past, typically the traditional way does typically win out in that kind of favoritism, but also Final K bringing back up that it is a rematch against the Kings. It was the semifinal match, the two of them squared off, and unfortunately for the Dragons, the Kings were able to find their win during that one. So now, looking for a little bit of revenge from their Masters rematch.
No, I've got a theory, and I just figured it out. I can't believe this didn't come to me sooner.
Oh.
Final K he's got a big brain on him, and he realized that the Kings were listening to that interview, and he's like, yeah, man, the meta didn't change, I swear.
Wink, wink,
so they're
nudge,
gonna
nudge.
they're gonna be going in thinking like, oh man, we got to ban out these hunters, and then he's going to be able to first pick Arthur or something, use the glad shit he was talking about, and he's just going to have a free lane because the Camelot Kings have been banning away that King Arthur so much. And, you know, King Arthur has a good solo lane presence, but I also just think they don't want anyone else getting their mascot.
Yeah, more than anything else. I think watching the soul lane is going to be important. Variety has somewhat been a bit of a sacrificial lamb for his team. We always kind of talk about how every team kind of has that one. You know, you look at the Leviathan, Zapman's often the one who kind of gets dropped onto his team. That way the rest of them can pop off, and then Zapman gets the late game and does Zapman things, where he ends up being one of the hard carries alongside Shinto and Panatom. For the Kings, it's somewhat of that way in that solo lane. And I think maybe to some of the same degree, you can kind of say that with Final K over on the side of the Jade Dragons. We'll see how things have maybe changed up. For picks and bans in game number 1, Camelot Kings and the Jade Dragons, our first match in Phase 2 of the SPL here in Season 9. First guy going to be banned away is something that was very popular during the Masters. Been very popular in the SCC matchups until now. It's going to be that Mercury.
Yeah, even though there were some of the Merc build did take a hit, I think Crit Merc is still going to be very solid and just, you know, separating a team. Sonic Boom, one of the best ganking tools that we have in Smite. So taking that away is going to be a great option. Quick farm seems to be what the Kings are focusing on. Poseidon and Mercury can farm very quickly, and that's something that they do very well. Taking that away, going to be a solid bet, and at least I won't have to see AMC in any sort of role, because that is also going to be banned away with the Jade Dragons, though. They're going to hit a lot of these support style picks. Obviously Baron more so in that solo lane, but Yamoja and Kepri. Usually the Kings do take a lot of bans away of Genetics. Whenever Genetics is in the game, he's going to eat some of those bans, but Ullr is going to be the option. More often than not, that's going to BMT in the mid lane.
Yeah, we have been seeing a lot of the Ullr mid. We saw a little bit of Ullr solo by way of SOT. I think even Variety maybe was able to find a pick of that later on through, but this Chernobog has become a very popular pick. The Jingwei seems to have maybe fallen a little bit out of favor over anything else, kind of with some of the change-ups to some of the build paths. Maybe we don't see her nearly as much as the Chernobog, but the Jade Dragons going to stick to some of this high DPS markup, something that didn't get picked up a whole lot, even though a lot of these double and triple Hunter comps came around. Fafnir locked in alongside this Chernobog.
Yeah, now it's up to the Kings to decide what they're going to be going for here with the Fafnir. That opens the possibility of, do you want a second Hunter? Do you want more auto attackers to just, you know, get more value out of that coerce, out of that, you know, group AoE attack speed buff? Now the Kings, though, have their chance here. Notably, one of those picks that shuts down these auto attackers that we've seen a fair bit in the SCC, as you talked about, is that Kumbhakarna. Haven't seen it too much in the SPL. You know, it's more so the safer style of Guardians, like the Kepri, for example. Geb is still available as well, but if you want to get some pressure in that support role, if you want to make sure that your ADC is having a good time, usually that's not going to be the case. King Arthur, though, will be picked pretty quickly here in the Jingwei. So, you know, we did expect to see the Jingwei. It didn't get picked first because that Chernobog had that global presence, but Jingwei will be grabbed here as well as that King Arthur.
And you also just can't give Peg on Ullr the amount of times that he, or even PandaCat, whichever of those two players ended up getting that pick. You definitely can't let that Ullr through. So the kind of the 3 bans and then the pseudo 4th ban with that pick there by the King. So now they round out with 2 Hunters and a King Arthur. The option goes over to the Jade Dragons if we see another Hunter locked in. Chernobog has been seen over towards the solo lane, has been seen over towards the Hunter role, and now with the Scotty locked in, I still have a couple of questions as to where this pick may go.
Well, I don't think I do. We've seen, I personally have seen PandaCat slam in the Scotty in ranked, which tells me the Chernobog is probably going to that solo lane. I mean, you're going to be up against a King Arthur, so they have time to flex this and say, you know, do you really want to go up against this King Arthur? Fine, okay, do you want to, you know, have that sort of global presence in the lane? And, you know, you're probably going to be getting bullied because King Arthur usually does not care about any of these ADCs until late game anyways. So I think they will hold on to that flex potential and possibly, you know, call an audible here shortly. Kali will be the ban, though. Again, one of these characters that farms very quickly in the jungle. That's still going to be something that you want to take away. And now the Kings are just hovering on what they want to do next. I think Hebo is going to be a solid pick here when there is 2 Hunters locked in. Trying to take away those magical jungles from Sanford Soccer is always going to be a great option. With the fact that Poseidon's already gone, I don't think that Sam looks towards the Ao Kuang. Ao Kuang not very favorable right now. Things like the Kabrakan or the Athena also could be an option, but is that something you really want to go for? No, the Nemesis is going to be the option. Taking away some of those protections for these physicals is going to be your best bet.
So the Kali and the Terra bans by Jade Dragons. Terra a ban up against genetics more than anything else. The Habwa, as you highlighted, makes a lot of sense considering how many of the double or triple hunter plus magical jungle that the Jade Dragons have been running to try and counter out the fact that they were lacking some of the more natural magic damage in that aspect. The Freya ban is the one that really catches me by surprise more than anything. I would have imagined with the Gilded Arrow nerf, that would have kind of knocked Freya down a peg or two.
I mean, to me, that's just the king saying, hey, you want a magical force, right? You wanted a Hebo, you wanted a Poseidon. You're not going to play Ao Kuang, so we'll just ban the Freya. If you want to do what, Oleron jungle, sure, you could have tried it. But again, they are more so looking for that Nemesis just to shred the protections for these physicals. I would not be surprised if we just see Fafnir being the sole magical damage on this team. But they also could still be looking for that mid laner. They have a few different options here. That Thoth, notably, is still open. You have some solid range here, but in that lane, you're going to, if one axe connects from the Uller, it's going to be a rough time. I'm really interested to see what the Jade Dragons are going for. While we were talking, though, the Ymir and the ESET got locked in. So that tells me that's probably Twig on the Ymir, and that's ESET support. So Ymir jungle, right? That's got to be it.
I was going to pose that question to you. You know, would this be the Ymir jungle with the ESET support, or would it be the opposite? You know, we see Sino over in the SCC, and we've also seen the ESET come out a couple times in the SPL towards the jungle, but it seems that you're throwing a little bit more confidence towards Captain Twig going to be piloting that god. And now with an Artemis hover, this is going to put a lot of physical damage on the side of the Jade Dragons, only Fafnir for their magical. And I would imagine with still how prevalent Oleron is. I mean, Sanctified Field, such a great ultimate to have out there in the mid lane, a good source of magic damage, but the Jade Dragons aren't going to have it. They're going to go for another hunter.
Yeah, okay, so there still is some flex potential here, obviously, with the ESET and the Ymir. I'm not sold on the Ymir jungle idea. I think the ESET jungle is certainly good, but I mean, the only issue I had with it is that you don't farm quite as quickly as this Nemesis, and you're going to fall behind, and once you get to level 5, and you're still not quite at that point, it's going to be a little struggle. And Genetics just has such a good game on the ESET in particular. But Ymir also going to pay dividends here. There's a few characters that don't really want to deal with those walls. Now that I'm looking at this draft peter out and we saw the Artemis hover, that had to be the Panda Cat pick, right? So maybe this is the Scotty going to the mid lane. Fine, okay, we'll take that Chernobog. And still, again, there's a lot of flex potential here. We don't really see too much of Scotty go anywhere but to Panda Cat, but I imagine Pagon's got to have a Scotty pick in the back pocket, right?
I don't doubt that Pagon has every single god in the book under his belt at this point. I would even throw that he would maybe play some Guardians out in the mid lane if he really had to try and really flex his muscles over anything else. So the Jade Dragons sticking with their guns, so they're still going with their ideas back from Masters, where it's this triple hunter, and maybe Final K wasn't being a bit coy with his interview. Maybe he was being dead serious about it, that they think that this is still the way to go.
I mean, I'm interested to see how the lane matchup works, right? I think variety on King Arthur with the Glad Shield buffs, that scares me. I just don't think ADCs are going to have a great time until the later stage of the game against that King Arthur. Putting you in a lane, forcing you to fight the King Arthur, you know, cannot be the best option. So we'll have to see how it goes. Maybe Sanford Soccer will, you know, spend some time over there shredding those protections, setting up for some ganks so that the hunters don't really care and don't really have to worry about brawling with King Arthur.
So we do know that with these hunter compositions, objective is going to be the name of the game. Decent bit of team fight out there when you throw things like a Fafnir Ho Yi as a combo, even the Scotty out there, and Nemesis for some of the shred. So when it does come down to these team fights, Trelly, is there a kind of a more of an advantage that you throw for one of these teams?
I mean, the Jade Dragons got to be playing for late game, and if they do get to that point, it's going to be hard to exist. Even with all the physical protections in the world, when a Nemesis ults, you know, when they get an Executioner on board, the penetration will be there. They will have plenty of DPS, and I think that's what the Jade Dragons will be playing for. On the flip side, the Camelot Kings, they don't mind playing for, you know, they don't mind sitting and getting as much farm early as possible. One of the best macro farmers in SMITE, period. They just know how to get ahead, even if they're not finding those ganks, even if there's not finding those picks. So it's going to be hard to get to that late game if the Camelot Kings have like a 4 or 5k gold lead, that sort of thing. It's going to be up to the Jade Dragons to try and just sort of stall until they can get those hunter items online.
I mean, it's one of the praises that we often sing about the Camelot Kings is that even if they go down to 3,000 gold in the early game, their macro play, their ability to kind of play these objectives more than anything else is usually what rounds them out there. And now they're going to be going up against a triple hunter plus Fafnir and a Nemesis. I mean, objectives are going to get melted. Anytime the Dragons step up to it, you have about maybe a 4 to 5 second window that you have to get to that objective and try and steal that one away, at least for my money's worth on this call, Trelly.
Yeah, but there are some, you know, there's different ways you can try and counter that out. The Horrific Emblem upgrade, for example, Witchblade, those mid-guardian mail, so many different ways to try and slow some of that auto attack damage, try and just be as annoying as possible for these auto attackers. Again, not too much burst damage besides maybe, I don't know, like if Scotty's going the full red items build and just like Heartseeker, that sort of thing, you got a little bit of burst there, but not going to be your biggest tool on your side. So I think the Jade Dragons are looking for picks as much as possible, trying to put the numbers in their favor until late game when they can all just, left click and win games.
Right, things like Frenzy, Bracer could even pop up there, maybe add a little bit of extra damage to really either side of there. So Shell has also kind of been making its way into a lot of the builds, not just between the support, but even some of the mids and the carries have been picking up that relic. At least in our SCC games, we were seeing double and triple Shell kind of making their way, even if there's not any kind of wall to deal with, so you don't even get a Phantom Shell plus a fortifying. It's just been 3 fortifying shells across the boards. I mean, how much of an impact do you think that can even make in this matchup?
Yeah, I've got a feeling the Camelot Kings are going to pick up at least 3 shells. And I mean, you're up against what? Nemesis, Scotty. I mean, you have so many auto attackers to deal with, but where's the burst damage coming from? I already highlighted it. You don't really need Aegis in this matchup. You pop a shell, then that runs out. You get your ADC to pop a shell. You get your support to pop a shell. Mid has one as well. That makes your life very difficult. As these like Chernobog, for example, is just auto attacks. He has like his little combo with his 1-2, but it's mostly just auto attacks. It's gonna take a lot of your damage away, and it's gonna stall it out as much as possible. So again, I think these Jade Dragons are going to be trying to get as late as possible. Once they get to that point, gonna be hard to engage. But if you can just focus out one target, PBM gonna be pretty on point with his CC on this Fafnir pick. Once you can focus someone down, doesn't really matter how many shells you have that are stuck in one place for that long.
And one of the changes that we have seen, obviously a little bit of a nerf to the extra crit damage that does come from Deathbringer, but also a buff to Spectral Armor, making it to where you take even less damage from those crits. So with all these hunters kind of popping up, and maybe kind of going back to the Final K interview, he was alluding to this new style of hunter build. We saw it out of Snoopy in the SCC match earlier on, where it was, what was it, Transcendence, Atalanta's Bow, and then you would go Fail Not after that, and then like a Malicious Deathbringer. So really kind of changing up the build path in that aspect. Do you think we maybe see some similar light here in this SPL match?
I think the Cal Transcendence Atalanta's Bow has got to be, core, but the Fail Not Malicious Deathbringer, that's more so, hey, I'm up against not so many. I'm not against double tanks with Spectral Armor, because we saw, I think I saw a 54 damage crit. There was no penetration in the build, and that's what I'm talking about here. If you're up against like a King Arthur with Glad Shield, Sovereignty, and Spectral Armor, you're going to want that Silver Branch. You're going to want that Dominance online. With those builds, though, and a Nemesis to shred protections for you, your crits are still going to be flying. You have to build accordingly and play around those things.
So Pen's going to be the name of the game for the Dragons to try and shred through these Camelot Kings. We'll see who's going to take game number 1 in the clashing of the metas between the Camelot Kings and the Jade Dragons, starting right now.
Time to kick off phase number 2 here in Season 9 of the SPL, and it is the Dragons versus the Kings to take us in. Dolson and Goremizer will be bringing you the action, and Gore, what a way to start off the second phase here in the SPL. A matchup that we got during Masters, one that the Camelot Kings came out ahead of.
Just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, but look, during that second week of Masters, I was in the hometown of many of the Camelot Kings over in London, so I missed a lot of the SPL meta during that event. Apparently, a lot of it is what the Jade Dragons have done.
It was a lot of this. A lot of this isn't necessarily too surprising. Maybe the ESET jungle, question mark? Not as surprising, I think, as it would have been, A, if Sino didn't do it all of the time last year, and B, if we hadn't been seeing a little bit more of it on the rise as of late. But auto attackers, hunters specifically, I was actually more interested in seeing what kind of builds we were getting from these hunters. Yeah. Because, while you were gone, second week of Masters, you're getting them, but it's Gilded Arrow into a Devo's Gauntlets into usually either some attack speed or crit, depending on how they felt that day, right? What are they going up against, all that kind of stuff. A lot of those got hit with nerfs when it came down into the 9-5 balance. So you can already see, no Gilded Arrows are not going to be as prevalent as it was. Instead, we've got the Hunter's Cowl getting picked up, Bluestone for the Uller, a lot of it that makes sense. But changing up how these builds are going, I think what's interesting to me is that it just changed the builds, didn't change the prevalence of the Hunters being big. Chernobog, I think the first time I saw it, wasn't a big fan of him in solo, but because he has that capability to have that global rotation, he's getting to the fights a little faster than Variety, or if Variety out-rotates him, he can join at any time. The downside is you're missing a little bit of that tanky presence, but you usually make up a damage.
Big damage on the Twig, and Pagon
like that
knocks him down for the first blood here in Phase 2 of Season 9. Jade Dragons funnel it through their mid lane, And that is just a slow and
Scary.
some burst damage from the Dragons.
Oh, I was thinking, scary thought. I
That's
don't
true.
want Pagon to have any sort of lead if I can avoid it, right? At any given time, I think that he has been just phenomenal this year. And that's on picks that maybe don't get too far ahead. I don't personally know what Pagon Scotty looks like, if I'm going to be open with you. So it's going to be a fun little, I think, exploration to see how that ends up working out. But you already have a small lead, granted, right? You know, half a level from that, he ticks over to 4, while there's 5 on the other side, or sorry, 3 on the other side. Tings isn't relying as heavily on that level 5 mark as like a Scotty would or as any, standard mage or hunter would, because you don't need the ult, you're Uller. But it is still going to be something to contend with. Once that comes online, maybe a little bit more gank potential for this Nemesis, and maybe more realistically chase down potential that the Scotty can then afford in the mid lane. And so you don't want to control it. That being said, it's still just first blood. Showcase is exactly what this comp wants to do, though.
Yep.
Fight, and a lot of it. They just want to hold W.
And that's pretty similar to how the Jade Dragons found success during the end of that seeding tournament. Remember that Final K was talking to us about in the pregame interview. That's honestly the style of play of playing early around the jungle in mid with Pagon. Just got so much success rolling for the Jade Dragons toward the end of phase 1. And I like seeing them, return to their roots a bit here, get Pagon off to a good start at the start of phase 2. Again, you mentioned it, slight level lead over big man Tings, but of course you're going to have 2 ability-based hunters in mid. BMT is going to scale up just fine, just a bit behind to start off this game here. Golden Blade continues, though. That was very prevalent during Masters.
Yep.
That'll stick around here for Sanford Soccer. And then it's the pacing of Captain Twig. So if Sanford Soccer gets that active early, we'll see what the Nemesis continues to do at level 5. You're hoping that Captain Twig can provide some of that utility that we know ESET's famous for.
And it is unfortunate because I think, and you can kind of see here, Bax gets the Cursed Orb, admittedly doesn't have the assist, so didn't get that extra gold, and maybe is falling, quote-unquote, behind in the farm, as you can see, just a little further behind, at least in terms of gold in hand right now, but only able to get Cursed Orb, not able to get the full jump to the Doom Orb, so you're slightly behind in that, and that feels like it's maybe just a mage problem. Like, items are pretty expensive over there, and so it's going to be something that he has to contend with. Still, really big power spikes with every single thing he gets.
Whoa, Captain Twig had to use the sprint, but doesn't matter. Again, the Jade Dragons, they funnel pressure through mid, and it's Captain Twig this time who stuck around and falls for the second time this game. So Big Man Tings has just been a bystander to the 2 kills that have fallen over in mid. And I was going to reference the sprint because going up against Nemesis, you love having the sprint, and you have the Doom Orb. ESET's going to be moving quickly at points throughout this game. This hasn't been quick enough here, Gore. And now a 2-level lead out of the jungle. Sanford Soccer on the Nemesis, off to a great start.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the way to highlight it. Is like eventually, this ESET will be able to either stun, silence, circle of protection, do a lot to try and save yourself there. As of right now, you still just have a Cursed Orb and a sprint that didn't mean anything to the Dragons. That is exactly what you want. I think for this, the Dragons, for Pagon, for Sam, to be able to get aggressive, you get the first blood onto your mid laner, then you get the second kill onto Sam. Now they both have, I want to say, significant enough of a lead that they're going to start really noticing it just in the item build. I mean, again, the Golden Blade already finished for Sam. He's going to be able to back up pretty soon and finish another item. And you're already stacking your Transcendence if you're Pagon. Getting that assist has now got you, 12 stacks technically over Big Man Tings. And that seems like I'm counting small, itty-bitty problems, but realistically that means when you get that full stack, you have a significant advantage from the power spike. Then you're going to see from Big Man Tings. So that, 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds that you're going to have is actually a golden opportunity for the Dragons to maybe rely on and count on Big Man Tings not hitting as hard.
Well, especially if Sam is going to keep putting pressure in mid, and that's an opportunity that Jade Dragons would love to take advantage of. Mike had just started his journey around the map. You saw Fafnir kind of poking his head around the back side of the wall just a moment ago. We're getting a decent variety in Hunter builds here, Gore. Final K with the Transcendence, same as Pagon and BMT, but he's got Cal. Or Pagon's got Transcendence and Bluestone. And you point all of this out at the beginning of the game, all the different starter items. Pandacat's gone Ikavale first item. And Netrioid goes Bloodforge first item. So we get a hefty variety here to look towards as this game goes on, how these builds are going to end up breaking down.
And that's true not just in the items, but also variety has started Sovereignty. I want to make a joke about him being tanky, but as I started it, I felt like it was going to fall
I don't know. love the name. I think Variety is a fantastic, player name to have. But so unfortunate for us, where if Variety is ever in any of these games,
Yeah,
we want to use
just the phrase
word
variety is
right.
the spice of life. All of a sudden,
Right.
you're like, well, yeah, just that guy actually.
Right. And I feel like that's something that's happened like
A lot.
generically in the SPL. Like if we're just filming content or whatever, somebody will say, "There's a lot of variety in this matchup," and somebody is obligated to say, "No, he's on the Kings" or something
Yep.
like that. So Variety, you've made our life difficult.
We need to get like a standard rim shot sound, like a doo-doo
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
just to have for whenever that comes up.
Sad-
As well,
sad trombone,
actually, I
right.
don't know if I want that because then it'll come up every time that a choke falls flat.
Right.
I don't need
Which
to
is
be
too
reminded.
often for us. As
Yeah.
a caster team, that would come up too often.
You know what? I'll talk about the things you were talking about, though. The Ichabod, I want to say, isn't maybe like it's a little surprising to me in that typically when you've been and when we have been in a Devos meta, no matter how long it lasts, this one was what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Yep.
But no matter how long it lasts, usually the first thing that ends up happening afterward, historically, has been exactly what's happening for Netrua.
Solo for Panda Cat. The ricochet chugs the health bar. Netroid, no chance. Stuck under the tower. And the Suns break on his dome. Now Panda Cat with a solo kill pulls himself a lead over on left.
And that goes to show lifesteal's not always the end all be all. Look, I think Bloodforge is a really big item. It's a good power spike.
Yep.
It's got good stats on it. And the big essential, if you get a kill, it's really great for team fights. But that big if at the beginning of it doesn't help so much in 1v1s when you're already low and getting sun dropped under your tower. Not a lot you can do there. I also think that's the other big thing to think about 9.5. Early on, some of the jungle nerfs that happened, just specifically to make sure that the camps aren't as bad.
Perfect beads from Pagon, but is Captain Twig now in some danger? Circle of protection popped. It looks like Twig will get out of this
stuff.
one just fine. Sanford Soccer lurking on the right. Looks like maybe just trying to find some jungle camps to invade. None will be there, though. This time, luckily, Captain Twig able to get out alive, holds on to the sprint. Genetics had to use his ultimate there, and that's Pagon really quick on the bead score.
Yeah.
Almost baiting in the Camelot Kings.
And pulling him forward. But look, again, he's got 15 stacks higher. He has that Evolved Transcendence. So in my mind, that was a good power spike to try and work around. Good ult drop. It just kind of unfortunate. There's a lot of good CC. And I think at this point, tankiness, I mean, look at the three in mid you're going to be going up against. Nemesis, you're going to go up against a Scotty. And then there's a Fafnir. So Fafnir, yeah, that hammer's going to hit hard, but he's got a Spirit Robe. He's not really itemizing to make himself hit that hard. Meanwhile, for Sam and Pagon, that sovereignty just alone from genetics, not even including what Variety has, makes things so much easier for him.
I thought it was going to happen to Netroid
Again.
here. Trebuchet just being a little obnoxious. Might get off one more stone, I guess is what a Trebuchet throws, but doesn't end up getting it off. Netroid able to clear that out.
They're flaming shots, right?
Yeah, but like, what is it? It's a flaming...
Usually it's like a rock soaked in like
Soaked in oil
that
or
they light
something.
on fire.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that on a cast. I'm just going to say a rock.
You don't want to get like the full description.
No, Captain Twig, he's got to use sprint here, and then the root from Pagon again is going to put pressure on Captain Twig. The playmaking style of jungle that the Camelot Kings love has just not been able to be there this game, and maybe sensing an opening are the Kings walking towards the Jade Dragons, but the Dragons will disengage. And it's the Dragons forcing the Kings to not play the King style of game. Captain Twig has just not been able to set up, provide anything this game. There's just been too much pressure.
But lucky for Twig, you're not dying as much as earlier on. Earlier on, they were catching you off guard and locking you down. Now you've got better walls, you've got good stuns, tings, genetics, Twig, Variety, all able to kind of help peel for just Twig to make sure that they get out of there, not including like the silences. So they've been doing a good job of slowing the Dragons down, making them pump the brakes, and really trying to catch up in that mid 2v2, right? Jungle's still a little bit behind, but you've got the Doom Orb online. You're going for some physical prots, which against this comp is going to be really helpful.
I'm trying to, if I'm Mike right now and I'm Fafnir, like what a dream team comp to be, like a team-wide coerce on a 3 ADCs and a Nemesis who's built into Golden Blade. That's gonna feel really nice around objectives and team fights. That's something the Kings are so good at, right? The objective control, map awareness, and right on cue, the Pyromancer will be pulled by the Kings. Something the Jade Dragons can force a little bit here this game. Maybe hoping to shred down Genetics. What a fight this is. Genetics takes an emerald, but has been able to waddle on away. Ultimate down from Panda Cat. Netroid around the backside of this fight. Final K is going to rotate over from Solo as well. That felt a bit awkward, Gore. And somehow Genetics able to stay alive.
What it is, you get, first off, phenomenal body blocks from Mike to make sure that Genetics can't get out of there too much. That was almost a great ricochet as well. But Genetics, honestly, maybe prefers that scenario. Now they might get Mike.
Oh, that is unfortunate from Mike. D-transforms and a fantastic wall from Genetics. We get the Camelot Kings on the board for the first time here in Phase 2. Awkward, Gore, I think, describes my feelings about that moment. I thought it was going to be a great initiation on Genetics, much like this one. Damage out, yes, but Netrioid, the one doing some body blocking, means another disengage from the Dragons.
Well, it showcases, I think, one, a great wall from Genetics prior to that, right? He walled off the damage from Sam and Pagon and Panda. Like, nobody was going to touch him. Only Mike is in the vicinity, so the auto attackers aren't hitting you. The Nemesis ult comes through, and then it's just playing the timer, right? You get body blocks from PBM that keep Genetics engaged, but Genetics is just buying time. They take a Pyromancer. What do they do right afterward? Oh, cool. Now we can just fight because the objective is down. Yep. So they turn that around. Meanwhile, the Dragons didn't get a Gold Fury at the time because he was distracted.
Ooh, Panda Cat. Damage onto Netrioid. Netrioid will disengage Gold Fury to the Jade Dragons. Good double wall from Genetics, but nobody in range to follow up. Captain Twig rooted down by Pagon. And FineOK used his ult, looks like, to rotate back towards the right side of the map. So the Jade Dragons extend out their gold lead just a bit, hovering around 3,000 or so, 2.5K in the experience department. 13 minutes into the game. Build starting to come along nicely here, Gore. Pagon stuck with the ability style build. Atalantis Bow for FineOK, Aussie for Panda Cat. And so all of the hunters following a similar thread, adding some diversification maybe and itemization the Camelot Kings are going to have to look towards. The Kings not unused to playing from behind, but the Jade Dragons really the ones controlling this map in the first 15 minutes.
What is it they say? Like, if they make it to 18 minutes, the game's over for them.
Yeah, right.
Admittedly, historically, not entirely true, but a good sentiment to have, right? They're a late-game team. That's how they like to play. And I think that their composition still lends itself pretty well to late game. Looking at the build right now from Netrioid, he's started up the Shuriken, so it feels like he's going to go into some crit throughout this build. And so he's going to be hitting hard. If you go into Spectral on the other side, well, that's good news for Tings. Tings is just going to be hitting base level. A lot of penetration in the ability-based build that he's gone for the Uller. A lot of stuns, a lot of leaps, a lot of good safety mechanisms and setup mechanisms that you're going to get from him. And so those two damage dealers alone feel really great. You've got the two standard tanks, the Warrior, and admittedly we haven't been seeing as many of them, but King Arthur was on the rise during Masters, seems to still be doing pretty well. And then you get the mage damage, some good bursts that you can get from Twig. It feels like a little bit more variety here for the Kings.
Yeah, variety. Ulting onto Sanford Soccer, who has to dash away. Root down, blink out from the Nemesis, and Sanford Soccer will live. And you see an early Spectral from variety. And Sanford Soccer looking like crit maybe in the back pocket of the Nemesis here. So you're going to have some crit. And the auto attack style of builds that the Jade Dragons are going for here as well, Gore. Fail not completed for FineOK, which is an item that we saw a good bit earlier on in the SEC. So clearly some of the build paths that we saw this morning during the SEC matchup still ringing true. Fail not one of those prioritized items.
Yeah, I was actually, honestly a little surprised. I was wondering what we were going to get out of FineOK. Started the Transcendence. Might have to do whatever he can to stay alive, though.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, here's the CC chain we were hoping to see, and the Camelot Kings put it all on FineOK, and a kill now answered back. Gold lead shrinks up just a bit, but that is a high commitment. 4 members of the Camelot Kings over to the right side. What are the Jade Dragons able to do in the meantime? Not much, and that means the timing of the Kings there pretty on point.
And it opens up a little bit, maybe in terms of jungle steal, right? And that might be it, but you now have a minute 20 left once the respawn comes through of beats that you can work with over on the right-hand side of the map. If you're looking for a Fire Giant anytime soon, that's a perfect timer. The problem is, and we had kind of mentioned this during Masters, worth mentioning again, that 18-minute mark that has been like the magic number for a Fire Giant over the last like 2 years. Like if you've got a lead, or even if you don't, if you just win a team fight around then, that's a good time to be able to pick it up. And usually the earliest that you would see anyone try it. That's gotten delayed to like 19, 20, 21, 22 now because it's just so much more difficult to walk in there and feel A, as tanky, but B, as damagey as you need to be with the farm slowing down a little bit, things like that. So this is an interesting pace to see. I want to say how the Dragons are going to kind of tackle this to keep their lead. but more what the Kings can do to continue making the Dragons feel awkward.
Red buff invade good from the Dragons, but what is the cost? Polar Bear Mike has to transform here. Fine, okay. Rotates over. Mike will get out of the fight this time. Variety down to half HP as well. A couple ultimates thrown out. No casualties in this fight. No Fury to fight over. There is a Pyromancer towards right, but neither team may be strong enough or in position to immediately go towards it. It's what I would say. Camelot Kings are going to pull the Pyromancer. Netrioid, therefore, needs to stay alive, and he's able to do so. And the Kings score, objective mindset, continuing to pay off.
And this is going to be a big deal for him. I mean, objective mindset, it doesn't even have to be the mindset.
Whoa,
Ooh, what
nice.
a good little juke. I don't know if it gets Netroid out of there, but that is a good way to at least stay alive a little longer.
Whoa, Netrioid with the juke shoes makes a big play. Sanford Soccer left
What a
empty-handed.
turnaround.
And so important. Again, one kill doesn't necessarily completely mitigate the Pyromancer going to the Kings, but that would have been a nice boost to the Dragons. Gives Panda Cat more of an edge. Look, the levels in the jungle have evened up. That would have been a nice little XP and gold boost for Sanford Soccer as well. Big plays from Netrioid to keep the momentum on the map in the side of the Camelot Kings.
And again, things like that are going to matter a lot more as we start to enter late game. If you look at what these team comms can do, I think I highlighted earlier, like the Kings have a really good team fight in my mind, double tank up front, especially now with Variety having that Spectral, so he can withstand a little bit of the crits coming from Sam and from Fine OK a little bit more. You still got burst damage, still got ability damage.
Man, Big Man Tings has been ulted time and time again by Pagon, but hasn't died for it just yet. Another decent wall from Genetics. Separates out the fight. Fine OK with an ult in towards mid. Again, all of this damage out, but nobody dying until Netrioid shut down by Sanford Soccer. Over on left.
He wasn't even in this fight.
Over on left, yeah, I'm like, where did that happen? Somewhere in the back line, surely. A nice Dispel Magic from Captain Twig. Should be the disengage here. And the one kill that happened wasn't over in mid. It was a solo from Sam.
Being able to find a kill like that, though, a big deal. Numbers advantage. The Fury is up. It's an Oni Fury on top of that, so you're going to get a little bit of pressure. This could open up a Fire Giant. You already have the lead, and so you get to force the Kings into a fight here.
Genetics walks forward, so does Captain Twig. Good ultimate from Panda Cat, separates out the back line. And here come the auto attacks. Ricochet actually stuns out onto Captain Twig. Polar Bear Mike jumps into the back. Variety left alone with the Jade Dragons. Will stun out, but not die. And again, kills escaping from the Camelot Kings. I don't think the Jade Dragon's super worried about it, though. The Oni Fury goes down easy.
Yeah, beneficial. If you get those kills, you get the Oni Fury, and you can probably reset Rush to Fire immediately. You don't get those kills, you get the Oni Fury, and you're going to have to play the ward game, right? Like,
Yep.
You don't necessarily get the free buff at the very beginning, and I don't think the Kings, I don't know, well,
I
no,
thought they
Circle
were
of
gonna
Protection
try
is
it, right?
down. If Circle of Protection was up, I'd say, yeah, let's go for it. Rush the FG, do what you can. But unfortunately, they don't have Twig's ult, and that's the big difference maker here. I think you've got a lot of burn on the Dragons. If they get a Fire Giant and the Kings just don't look, it's going to die before anybody can react. But that Circle of Protection, it changes everything.
Uh-oh, Genetics this time ulted. Yeah, no shot there. The CC plus the Nem ult means one dead Ymir. So the Jade Dragons now with the transformation out of Mike as well have Frenzy and have a massive Coerce. But the Jade Dragons, they're not going to commit onto the Fire Giant just yet. Instead, Frenzy gets used for the team fight, and Sanford Soccer has found the back line. Captain Twig body blocked, and that means another death for the Nemesis. The Jade Dragons will pick two and double back to the FG.
And this is going to be, again, pretty easy for them, right? Circle of Protection is up, but the guy that can use it is down. So you've got nothing but burn. Mike barely gets out of there alive, but they are going to be able to burn this down pretty easily. And you have to think about it, like looking at the builds, you've got a lot of attack speed, but between Pagon and Panda Cat, with Fire Giant buff, the 4 towers that are left standing don't mean anything to them other than gold in the pockets of the Dragons. Still going to hit pretty hard, still a little tankier, so might be a chance with a full strength fight. If the Kings really, really want to, they could step up to a tier 2. I wouldn't recommend it. I think it's going to be an easier Phoenix defense for them, and they've got a lot to work with in those narrower pathways that the Phoenixes give. And so I think if they can bring the Dragons a little further forward, they could probably wipe a good chunk of these Fire Giant buffs. But you've got to worry about a lot, right? You've got the Silver Branch online now, along with the Chin Size, the Aussie, the Ikaval. So Panda Cat's just hitting really hard. You look at Pagon, that build, it's hitting really hard. You've got crit and attack speed on Fine OK, and guess what? he's going to hit really hard. You get a Fafnir boost plus the FG. It's too risky, I think, to try and leave the base as far forward. Honestly, maybe even as they are. Luckily, they have time to play with, but I'm kind of surprised to see them as spread out and willing as they are right now, because the Kings are looking to try and go tier 2 for tier 2.
And Mike going utility-based here. So, of course, the Coerce, yes, has Frenzy, also has Emperor's Armor, and a Cursed Dunk. Mike's all about spreading the love here in this game. Let's knock down those towers a little bit quicker. Let's make them weaker. Let's speed up my team a little bit, and let's slow down the healing that the Camelot Kings are trying to do. A lot of it through that circle of protection. And Mike has done well so far. It feels like, though, Gore, and this is credit to the Kings, that this game could have been a lot worse. I'm looking at all of the ways that the Kings have gotten out of small moments. Big Man Tings has not died yet, despite being ulted by Pagon time and time and time again. So the Jade Dragons absolutely deserve this lead, but there are some small moments where the Kings have kept this from being even uglier. Are you going to put up a defense on the tier 2? No is the answer. The Kings will back away, look towards that Phoenix line. And the Jade Dragons may be considering the other tier 2 over on right.
That just feels like a comfort call, really, from both teams, right? Show face at the tier 2 if you're the Kings. If you think you have something to work with, maybe go for it. The minute you can see how fast the tower is dying, though, I like the call to go back. That's what 3 ADCs with a Fire Giant buff do to towers. That tier 2 still hits really hard, still has a lot of health, does not matter to them as much 23 minutes into the game. So I like the fact that they were willing to be there. And I also like the fact that the Dragons recognize the Kings have too good of a defense to just rush for a Phoenix, right? You've got a minute and a half left, so plenty of wiggle room still. But it's not as easy, I guess, as it could have been for them. I think walking forward into a Ymir, one good wall, one good freeze, a stun from the Uller, anything like that immediately ruins your day. But then you factor in Circle of Protection, which is going to cover a majority of the fight the Kings want, and all of a sudden it becomes even more troublesome for the Dragons. Downside for the Kings then would be, hey, we're missing the big team fight ult for a Fire Giant. But if you kill everyone on the Dragons, it doesn't necessarily matter as much.
Doesn't. But it's going to take an uphill battle to get there, Gore. Remember, Captain Twig had closed up that XP gap. Was even with Sanford Soccer. I think around level 16 is when they had maintained level similarity. Now Sanford Soccer at 20 and just now reaches 17 as Captain Twig. So it was 4 levels just a moment ago. Given the pacing, Gore, it actually looks like the Jade Dragons may be okay with waiting for the next Fire Giant to come back up. Though Captain Twig could be a target here. Sprint popped. And that is one quick E-set, as we mentioned earlier on in the game. So disengage from the Camelot Kings. 20 seconds left on the FG buff. A Fury is going to spawn. And outside of getting Phoenixes, the Jade Dragons got every single objective, tower, pool of gold on the map that they could have on this first FG. And this is a team now that has calculated their odds, calculated their chances. And I think they're right. They go back, reset, spend up this gold one more time. They've got a real good chance of closing out this game.
That engage in mid was the difference of, can we get a pick, right? I think the play that happens, no matter what, if you get a pick, you're going to then go Gold Fury, either push forward, see what you can do, maybe threaten a Phoenix, but you're going to hit the Gold Fury, you're going to reset, you're going to Fire Giant. Like, those are almost inevitables no matter what in that scenario. So it was just, can we get a kill, and what can we do if we do that? They don't get the kill, so they just have to go to plan B, which plan B is let's get even more rich, go back, get stronger, and come in to contest a Fire Giant. They've got good ward coverage, at least available in their inventory. I saw 3 sentries, 1 just got dropped, so they're going to be able to see pretty deep into the King's jungle, and they're going to have pretty good vision control over what the Kings are going to be able to see. And we saw how fast this Fire Giant can burn down for them. They've done nothing but get stronger, So in 10 seconds, you have to be present if you're the Kings.
Yeah, if you lose this FG, maybe even if you steal this FG if you're the Kings, this game close to over no matter what. Nice spread of damage.
You almost need this fight to go your way in order to make sure that you don't
to have any chance, right? I mean, it's 99% for the Jade Dragons. We have seen crazier things happen, though, but an 11,000 gold lead, hard to overcome for the Camelot Kings. Fire Giant respawns. Mike has Frenzy. Mike has Transformation. The Jade Dragons can play this one slow. If the Camelot Kings step forward, there's enough damage there to immediately turn a kill. This one's going to go quickly. Camelot Kings showing some face. Around the corner they go. Variety in on the initiation. The backline has been reached from both teams. Final K ults into the backside of the Camelot Kings. Variety losing his fight to Panic at nobody. needs to help out the Dragons
no.
ADC, but somebody needs to help out Sanford Soccer. It's a 1-for-1 trade as an airstrike from Netrioid goes up and over, but the health bar is way too low on the Kings to keep fighting.
And I really like that play from the Dragons. The idea was there, but good stuns from the Kings stop Sam from being able to get the kill. Tings lives, and now their burn is a little worse.
Uh-oh, Netrioid. Yeah, you don't want a front line as a Jingwei, my friend. Polar Bear Mike detransforms. Captain Twig and Genetics have to back away. Sprint gets used. The relic situation for the Kings is abysmal. You could say the same, though, for the Jade Dragons, who are actually one relic worse off. Only have beads for Pagon. All things considered, Gore, pretty close fight for the Camelot Kings.
Downside, close isn't good enough,
You don't
right?
have numbers, right?
You almost needed a win if you wanted the FG.
Yeah, you
Circle
lose it.
protection was used super early. Genetics still had ult, but no health to work with, so walking in there is a death sentence.
They can delay it for
And I
5.
Oh yeah, hold it for Sam. You
yeah.
said that and I looked up and I was like, it's only 27 minutes. What are they doing this for? They're not going to hold it for 3.
Or they probably could delay it for 3 minutes if they want. They shouldn't.
Yeah.
They shouldn't, but
That would be an interesting cast.
we've had some moments like that, though. Whether it's not like an actual active holding of the FG. We've had teams dance around Fire Giant
Yeah,
for 5
when it's, like,
minutes.
low.
A whole lot of. Oh, you mean?
I mean,
if it's
hold it low
at 10%
for 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they can't do that. I meant they could reset and hang out for 3 minutes if they wanted to. I wouldn't suggest leaving it at 10% HP. But the Jade Dragons do end up getting themselves Fire Giant on all 5 members, extending out that gold lead, and now 3 exposed Phoenixes left there. A decent counter initiation from the Camelot Kings, but I think you saw the downfall of Variety having to itemize against crit, against physical damage, against basic attacks. There's health shred from Panda Cat. Because Variety walked into the back line, and Panda Cat truthfully didn't need any help. He just shredded down Variety on his own, and that opened up the Jade Dragons to kind of fight elsewhere. I don't know how the Camelot Kings find an initiation here that works.
Honestly, it's like a design team's favorite dream and worst nightmare all at once. Because
close,
it's like
right?
there's 3 different builds that are built just on the Dragons for the same class. But at the same time, it's so difficult to try and balance. How do you build against all of that? Because like you said, if you're going for crit for Fino K and Sam, well, Pagon hits you with some abilities. Panda Cat's just autoing you harder.
Right.
And he already has Mark of the Golden Crow, so he's hitting you naturally even harder.
Yep.
And it makes things very difficult, I think, as a frontline, specifically for Variety here or for Genetics on the other side, to survive through the onslaught of what the Dragons have built.
Yeah, Variety's been the spice of death for Variety this game. The Camelot Kings haven't had much of an answer for it. Again, the last fight not super convincing for the Dragons, but health-wise was enough to grab FG. Now, I've been begging to see a moment like this since the Trebuchets have been in the game, where the Jade Dragons don't necessarily need to force anything. It's very, very slow. But this Trebuchet is going to slowly whittle down the health bar of that Phoenix from outside of Phoenix range. That's going to force the Kings forward. As Final K's gone back to base, but now can ult into the base of the Camelot Kings. Sanford Soccer in mid isn't going to fully finish off Variety. But now over under the left side Phoenix, the Jade Dragons keep fighting. Genetics rooted and Genetics shredded by Fino K, and the left side Phoenix falls as well.
And with the Trebuchet still technically alive at this point, they might be able to push it forward with them. Again, you have to play cautiously. Titan, pretty healthy. Still pretty tanky. Got a big boost in 9-5. So you want to go for the Phoenixes, try to burn them down. You've got the numbers advantage, so just go in and get aggressive.
Polar Bear Mike, silence.
They still have Frenzy.
And that could be an opening for the Camelot Kings, but no. Polar Bear Mike stays on the map, jumps back in. Pagon evaporates Captain Twig. And the Jade Dragons continue to walk into the base of the Kings, who are down to 3 members. Right side Phoenix, sure to fall here shortly, and you've got a full minute left of FG buff. And it looks like the Dragons won't push any further, Gore. Twig dead for 35, Genetics. Just now respawning. You know, Netrioid's strong enough. You're fighting with Fountain regen.
Yeah.
Jade Dragons don't want to take the risk.
You're missing out on a lot of your relics. You've got 1 shell left after the engagement, 3 pairs of beads. You've got the Enclave. It feels like it's almost enough, right? Like it's almost enough to fully convince you that, yes, it is going to be, could have been a win. But Netrioid's hitting pretty hard. Tings is hitting pretty hard. All it takes is 1 misstep, 1 mistake underneath the Titan, and all of a sudden the Kings can just turn it around, start rushing down. And admittedly, it would take a while, but if they kill 4 of you, and you're gone for a minute on the Dragons, then it's easier to burn down a tier 2 and burn down, what is that, like going to be an 18k health plus Titan that's on the other side. So really, I think being able to play it patiently, while it might take a little bit longer, and it kind of still feels like a sure thing for the Dragons, it gives the Kings enough of an opportunity that you can push up a couple of waves, try to keep yourselves in there. Don't fight over that Pyromancer, or not Pyromancer, Primal Fury. It means pretty much nothing to you outside of the fact that it'd be nice gold to have. But you're starting to hit your 6 slots, so gold cap is almost there. You've got the upgraded starters. It's just finishing these final items. And of course, ward coverage, as you can see, Dragon's inventory is coated in vision. And then it's whether or not you can take this fight. You've got your ults available to you. You're going to be missing Twigs beads when the FG spawns. That's going to hurt you maybe the most.
Oh.
Otherwise, everything's pretty much up and available.
I admire the attempt there from FineOK. Ulted towards Netrioid, who is just able to get the back to base. I actually don't know how that works. If Netrioid had... It's where... You teleport to where the shadow was, right? So if Netrioid had finished his channeled back with the
there's like a small timing window where like either
FineOK into the fountain?
where like FineOK either lands and stops the back,
right,
or the shadow moves with him to the fountain, right?
And
so he'd have to go. And so it's like you land if it's timed right, the shadow will be there, and then as he's traveling,
that would have been
you'll
funny.
disappear.
Yeah, I have
and so lucky him.
I had no idea how that interaction would have worked. Yeah, lucky for FineOK to stick around on the map. Mike jumps away, circle protection down, frenzy used by the Jade Dragons. Fire Giant still stands, and the Camelot Kings have stepped forward to defend it. Good cleave damage out from the Dragons. Sanford Soccer from stage left.
That's a lot of
puts down Captain Twig with the help of Panda Cat. Genetics stuck in place again. Wall goes up, and that stops this fight. But another gank from Sanford Soccer. This time it doesn't pay off as the Camelot Kings have gotten the shutdown. Good ricochet from Panda Cat keeps the momentum rolling, and the Jade Dragons bring a one-man advantage into the base.
Look, you still have 2 shells, you still got 2 bees, and you've got the numbers and the damage on your side, plus minions. Yeah, take the fight.
Uh-oh, Polar Bear Mike eats some crits. Netrioid goes big, but the Titan is shredded by the Jade Dragons in their triple DPS composition. Game number 1. I'll call it convincing to the Jade Dragons.
It was a very good control throughout the entirety of it, right? It was never enough that it was like the Kings are out of it from early on. The Kings kept pace. They got Pyromancers. They got a couple of good choice kills early on that kept them just in line enough to make sure that things didn't feel too heavy-handed on the Dragons.
Right.
And then the first Fire Giant happened. And it was like, okay, well, they're behind, but they can still maybe take the next fight. And then the second Fire Giant happened, and it was like, all right, now the Dragons are just ahead. How well can you defend? How well can you find these picks? And unfortunately, from what we saw, the answer was not very, right? The tanks were getting shredded by one of 3 varieties of builds. And then even if you were able to survive, there wasn't really a lot of damage. We didn't get to see a lot from Twig that game outside of the first few minutes when, unfortunately, it was a lot of deaths for Twig as opposed to maybe anything big that you could expect out of the ESET.
Gore, that almost felt like a Kings-esque style of game from the Dragons. All the objectives, slow burning, building up the gold, and then the kills start to roll a bit later on. Jade Dragons come out of the gate swinging to start off Phase 2. 1-0 up to the Jade Dragons. Time for the Kings to bounce back right after this.
Taking me out of this world. Wave. Nice guy with a cold shoulder. Yeah, we cool, but I don't know you. Wrote a flower and I'm off the potion. Give me superpowers that I won't stop. To the bank roll on supermassive. Big bank for the space chatter. Way up in a squad NASA. Copperfield with the dark magic. Subtle flex when I run a race. Tell these rap buddies eat my dust. Lil baddie up the cellular. Talking life and how we set it up. I'm a sharpshooter, yeah, Will Smith. Call me Prince Park, let me freshen up. Bay boy on the level up. Way up near the nebulas. I'm never copping a chain, cause I see it all through the frames. And I leave it all on the page, it's feeling like they want me locked in a cage. They want us all on the fade, but I'ma go all the way A with it, cause I don't feel all the way safe here. Yeah, spray the champagne, shower up in the air. Stunner goggles, I don't mess with the flute. Untamed and she wild off the goose. Ghost ride, yeah, I come through the roof. Ducking 12, get it all on my tail. Hella wild and I break all the rules. Chill, bro, you way out of line. Yeah, I know it's a mood. I'ma go all the way up. They keep on calling my phone. They catching on to the buzz. I got it out of the mud, but I'ma go all the way up. Bad girl from the soil, she taking me out of this world. So I'ma go all the way. Jade squinting, got the gator spinning. I'm outrageous with it, going crazy with it. Got the phrase jumping off the page, gifted, got the waves swishing, got the neighbors tripping, got the trap booming, jumping out the speakers. Drip on me, jumping off the easel. Gold wristed, couldn't tell me nothing. No, bought a fisted. Cooking the bars, turn a lab into a living kitchen. Watching grimace when I water with it. Subtle flexing, live a candid image. Come from pushing in the S-type with no license, gas low, the windows tinted. Still couldn't see me with the zoom on your little vision. Nah, we are not the same, we got different lenses. No one snapping like we something real vivid, keep it realistic. Quick to split it with my day ones. Got the label making bank runs, cause a train of thought like a freight, huh? I'm the type to get a late start. You the type to be afraid, huh? I'm the type to never have things. You the type to have it made, huh? Yeah, wave. And I keep fuel to the flame, huh? How they got me going this hard, really I'm the type to never say much. Vice grip, got the game clutch. Every song make the stage rush. I always said making money might change things, but never let it make us. I'ma go all the way up. They keep on calling my phone. They catching on to the buzz. I got it out of the mud, but I'ma go all the way up. Bad girl from the soil, she taking me out of this world. I'ma go
all the way up. They keep on calling my phone. They catching on to the buzz. I got it out of the mud. I'ma go all the way up. They keep on calling my phone. They catching on to the buzz. I got it out of the mud. I'ma go all the way up. Y'all hit up with a dream, hold it down for my team. I'm afraid of how I'm feeling. I get higher than the ceiling. How I'm feeling, higher than the ceiling. I've been living like I'm past rules. In this where I tap to and living like I'm finished.
Bitch, I'ma go all the way up. Wave. All these opportunities were just across the bridge. The world was more than twice the size, and now I was a kid. Traded in the comfort zone for life, I'm on the edge. I was gaining on my dreams, holding tightly to the pledge. To my
A little bit of a slow burn to start things out, but the Jade Dragons come out on top in game number 1 over the Camelot Kings with this triple Hunter, Assassin, Fafnir comp. It's something that we talked about kind of going into it was once an objective is started, the Dragons could probably burn that one down quickly. Maybe didn't account for just how much damage they could also do to the opposition. When it came down to these team fights, Charlie, it really did just feel like the Jade Dragons had complete control walking into every single fight.
Yeah, I mean, they had the global presence with the Chernobog. Panda Cat was able to completely dominate his lane, so they never really had to worry about Nitroid rotating in. And, I mean, Captain Twig on this E-set was never able to get started, which it frustrates me, J-Mac, because we were talking about this over the break. We just sat down with the junglers yesterday. Twig was there, and he was the one piping up about if you can't build Golden Blade, if you can't run to farm quickly, you're always going to be a level down. You're never going to get your ultimate up before the opposition. Sanford Soccer got that kill early because he was only level 4, and it's just, he's the one who picked the C-set. So I'm wondering, maybe this was a strat gone wrong, or just, it worked with the comp, that sort of thing. But I don't expect this sort of pick to really stick around much. If you're not able to farm very quickly, like on the Poseidon, for example, if you're a magical jungle, you better be on Hebo with the Doomorb, with the Carpet running to farm. You better be on the Poseidon. The E-set, I just don't think came out to a great start, and after the fact, wasn't able to ever get legs up under it.
And then I just got to highlight, I saw, Panda Cat walking back through the lobby earlier on, and I said, this was a disgusting and a sick play to watch, was this ricochet bounce on the Hoyi under the tower. I mean, Panda Cat able to get a nice early start to get a lead over Netro, and then from there it just continued to spiral out of control with the help of Sanford Soccer in the jungle, and everybody else able to rally around. Final K able to find some strong picks as well. So it seems, at least when it comes to the battle of the minds in the aspect from the pregame interview, Captain Twig thought that a lot of things were going to change up. We were going to see some new changes in the meta more than anything. Could have maybe been him being a bit coy compared to where Final K was, where Final K said, no, we don't think things are going to be changing from Masters. And based off just this game alone, aside from some of the builds at the very least between him and Panda Cat, not much has changed. The Dragons are still playing this same style of composition that they were playing a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. I think the big difference maker was that just it seemed like the E-set was never able to get up and running. Variety looked pretty solid up in that lane. I think that BMT was also pretty on point there. I don't think he was even able to die that game. So there was still some good things to look at from the Camelot Kings draft. Just you have to get out rolling quickly with that jungle. And again, if Iset gets behind in the jungle, she's never going to be able to kick up. So I have to imagine there's going to be some switch ups there, but not out. Down but not out are the Camelot Kings. They should be able to go back and make some adjustments here. Obviously, they know now what the Jade Dragons are looking to do. That Chernobog, for example, putting so much prioritization into it, I imagine they could pick apart this draft pretty easily.
Potentially so. And I also made some shouts over towards Genetics, some of the early game walls, especially kind of the delay of the Gold Fury, able to keep his life alive while his team was doing Pyromancer. It's something that I kind of point out to you that I noticed that Genetics would look like he was actually maxing his wall first over any of his other abilities, because it's felt like a solid 4 or more seconds that he was able to keep a couple of the carries of the Jade Dragons back while his team finished up that Pyromancer. We'll have to see what kind of changes maybe in the drafts at least happen for the Camelot Kings. Jade Dragons don't really feel like they need to make a whole lot of change-ups, but I think similar to what we saw out of the Titans set against the Camelot Kings back at the end of Masters in that grand final, this Chernobog really seems to be a massive linchpin for these teams.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're right to highlight that the Jade Dragons, they just got off a pretty convincing win. They were never really... It was never really in any contention, maybe some picks here and there. San Francisco diving pretty far into the back line. But besides that, it's not broken. They don't have to fix it. So it's really all up to the Camelot Kings right now. The ball is in their court, essentially, what they want to do and try to pick apart the draft, as they mentioned. But I think it was pretty obvious what was happening and what they have to do to change it. That's not the obvious part, right? It's easy to look at something and say, okay, this is what we did wrong. How to fix it, however, that's going to be what's more difficult.
Yeah, and it's something that, we kind of talked a little bit about in, I think it was one of the Bolts games where Venenu had gone for this ESET mid style, going up against, again, another one of these double or triple hunter comps. It just feels like when ESET is being run at by multiple hunters, she's not really able to get her CC off, to be able to get her damage out there, and it really does feel like that kind of a god and that kind of a pick just can't get the ball rolling in that aspect just based off the comp that they're going against.
Yeah, it really just depends the play style. Obviously, Paul has seen some success on the character. It's just, she has a lot of control. We've seen Genetics play it in support quite well. It really just depends on what you're up against. And I think the biggest thing is where are you getting your farm from? If you're in ESET jungle, it's from the camps. And you're up against a Nemesis with Golden Blade and a speed buff, just getting there simply faster than you, farming it quicker. And the ganks are better for all intents and purposes. So it's just really difficult to make that pick work again. I think that, it was a good try, obviously. And now it's time to figure out what else is going to be matching that farm quickly. The Bakasura, obviously, something that Twig might be looking at here. Anything that can match that sort of pressure, I'd be much more accustomed to seeing.
Maybe even the Vamana could be something that maybe Captain Twig could even bring out, something he was playing before. Saw some success out there as well. So a lot of things that the Camelot Kings can do to change up for game number 2, to kind of combat against Dragons. I'm actually curious as to what the Dragons were all huddled around Pagon's computer looking at. Maybe had the coach in there talking, going over some pages, some spreadsheets, maybe seeing what kind of things they want to draft.
Nah, it was memes for sure.
Memes.
They won. if it was the Kings, of course. They're talking to Biggie, figuring out what it is. It's the Dragons. They just won 1-0. They're looking at memes. They're not too stressed just yet. If it's 1-1, then of course back to the drawing board. All right, let's figure this out. But Panda Cat, he's sitting there. He's got his jug of water ready. He's just like, I'm on point right now. We saw those bounces, those ricochets were always nuts. So it's good to see Jingwei. Obviously, she just ran this last tournament, and now they're not banning her away. They don't care too much for the Jingwei, and not sitting very safe in lane, was she?
No, especially not even under her own tower. I mean, the double bounce that ended up happening by Panda Cat, and then immediately the Sun's Rain after, and that was when they were even. Both of them were sitting at level 9, so it wasn't like Panda Cat already had an exorbitant lead by that point of the game. It was pretty much dead even between those two gods there. So maybe this Jingwei, not as prioritized as she once was. I mean, during the Masters LAN, in the semifinals and the grand finals, that was the #1 pick to get. It felt like whatever team was getting her was winning. But now it seems that she's fallen a little bit out of favor, and this Chernobog has kind of been making its way up a little bit higher in the ranks. He was already kind of top 2, top 3 at that time. So maybe when it comes down to the Kings, maybe instead of picking up that Ullr for themselves to kind of take that one away from Pagon, maybe try and grab the Chernobog, take the Ullr away, and then maybe find something else for themselves.
Yeah, I think that could be an interesting strategy because BMT did look solid on the Ullr, obviously, but one Ullr does not make the squad. So I think there could be a few different ways that they try and combat that. The Chernobog, I just don't think, if you don't want to play it, I just don't see the reason of letting it through right now because of how annoying it is to split up your team comp like that. Obviously, if Variety's on a pick that can just like force the tower down after the fact, like okay, a Chernobog is in your lane, you're laning up against him, he flies away. Now you can just push the lane, you know, teleport away if you need to, but you know, it's just I don't see why you'd be letting that through.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting way, at least for the picks and bans to go through there. But we are going to take a little bit of a break before we come back to those. We'll be back in just a few minutes to get you started for picks and bans.
Through dripping Aquafina, I'm sipping 15, kept a weapon on me. Flow make digits, I'm on my business, stack chicken like what it's gon' be. Crew in the cut, hey, you want us, red run when I tell a peace. Love is love. Love is love. Adios. Bendo with the switch again. Boy deliver like he happening. Core with digits, give him estimates. Somersaults for my Benjamins. I got what you need, baby. Skirt the Chevy, make a scene, baby. LABB been the team, baby. Bim Papa, word the G, baby. Look, labs till I'm finished. Had a handful of lemons through the hand. Got a bag, now the hands in the business. For my hand, it's a ticket. Talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. I've been playing with the minutes that they been shoulda gave. And I'm flipping every digit that they been shoulda paid. Had to find a way to get it. Know this isn't what you made. If I ever wanna dip, then I'm brink with the blade. And I'm brinking a blink on the brink of some dumb shit. Watch how I move, cause I know the brink's coming. Watch for the blues, cause I know that they dumping. Nothing in my view, so it's hush on discussion. Hush on discussions, you know what you need to. I keep it in the fam to let you know that I don't need you. Y'all cats be see-through, heading out to peace. You been king, I'm regal, got it in my Abisu. Came through tripping Aquafina, I'm sipping 15, kept a weapon on me. Flow make digits, I'm on my business, stack chicken like what it's gon' be. Crew in the cut, hey, you want us, red run when I tell a peace. Love is love. Love is love. Hold up with it, got my back on Pippin. I'm back in kitchens with the tray. Windows tinted like how black my skin is. Scoop the shorty in it from a J. Swish, she got vision just like any women giving me the kitten. Way before the riches, nothing more to mention. I could light a block of powder or a glisten. Foreign on my body, that's a Gora linen. I came through tripping Aquafina, I'm sipping 15, kept a weapon on me. Flow make digits, I'm on my business, stack chicken like what it's gon' be. Crew in the cut, hey, you want us, red run when I tell a peace. Love is love. Love is love. Adios. Love is love. Love is love. Adios. Love is love. Love is love. Adios.
That Apollo kid is so wavy. up, wave.
Turn up the headphones a little bit. Hey. ISO. Let's get it.
Whoa, clear out the room, I'm coming through. They wanna see what I'm about. Yeah, I got skills, do it for the thrill. I'm on a paper route. Extra, read about it. I'm today's trying to top it. I put commas over bullshit. Yeah, I put that on mamas. They tryna block all my blessings. They thought I lost for snapping. I bet on me and my team. ISO is what I'm rapping. Put on for the whole city. Yeah, I got them rocking with me. I bet on me and my team. ISO is what I'm rapping.
Sending emojis. I'm blowing a pack of that OG. Don't be acting like you know me. And if you did, that's the old me. Winter time, rock a cold fleece. Pocket fat, that's obese. Only talking money if it's increased. She give me brain, girl, no teeth. I touch down, bust down. She busted open for a real. Stay timmied up, trying to build it up, trying to count it up, hill figures. Don't be chillin' with no lil, no. And if I do, I be real with them. Chase a dream, that's the meal ticket. ISO gang, yeah, they still with us. I put it in motion, they got me steady. Thoughts on my mind, it's weighing heavy. Watch how I shine, tell them I'm ready. I'm hitting my stride, let's get to the fetty. I was just sitting back watching them fold. Racks on me now, yeah, it's looking slow. I hold it down and I got my own. Keeping it grown, we back to the bone. Yeah, flying flashy, ayy. Hey, we too fancy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. So sorry for the delays, but we should be getting ready to jump into picks and bans for game number 2 between the Camelot Kings and the Jade Dragons. Dragons are up 1-0 in the set. If you're just now tuning into this point, you've already missed game number 1. It's an exciting game number 1 if you're a Dragons fan. For the Camelot Kings, maybe hoping that they can kind of find their footing here in game number 2, try and bring themselves some success, and maybe take themselves at least to a game number 3. If you forgot who was with me, it's Jim. I got Trelly helping me out as we get ready to prepare ourselves for picks and bans game number 2, because there was a lot of discussions that we had about some of the picks that maybe go through, maybe not necessarily top picking this Uller if you're the Kings, maybe trying to take away this Chernobog if possible. We'll have to see exactly what gets picked out, though, for game number 2.
I like the way you phrased that. It was an exciting game number 1 if you're a Jade Dragons fan. If you're a Camelot Kings fan, it was less exciting, but you're hoping they make those adaptations, and Mercury's still going to be taken away here immediately, not wanting to deal with that. The Kings also probably not putting too much prioritization on it because they are in that first pick slot. Also going to be banning away that AMC. No real changes being made just yet. The Baron and the Yamoja respectively for the Jade Dragons. And now the Kings have their opportunity. Is this what's going to finally change something up here about the Jade Dragons draft? Maybe that Chernobog. Maybe they're trying to first pick the Chernobog. There's a few different avenues here for some, throwing a wrench in what the Jade Dragons were able to do in game 1. And it looks like the Fafnir actually is what they are going to target. It's a PBM not going to be able to have that, team-wide coerce buffing all of those auto attackers anymore.
And now it begs the question, what do the Dragons ban? Because there's still a couple of big options available. Obviously, Poseidon and Habwa are still up on the table, something both the Jade Dragons and even the jungler on the side of the Camelot Kings would like. Khepri is still up. It's something that the Dragons banned last time. And I was wondering if they were going to ban it again here, and they do so. So now a lot of options. The Kings will be top picking that Uller, though they did in game number 1. We'll see maybe if he can bring him some success this time in game number 2.
You think the Chernobog's going to be picked here?
I would be willing to bet so.
Well, that's crazy.
That's wild, man.
Yeah, we definitely saw that one coming. And again, the Camelot Kings had to have seen that coming as well. They did put the prioritization in the Uller, and I think for good reason. BMT looked pretty sick on it, and it looks like the Jade Dragons will just be going for the salty run back. Not salty, they won, just the run back. They can't do the full run back because again, that Fafnir has been taken away. But now it's time for the Kings to make their, that whatever adaptations they have. The jungle, again, I imagine has to be changing up here. The ESET jungle just did not get off to a great start. Maybe that's the reason, though. Again, they've probably been practicing this, and if it doesn't get first blood, if it doesn't get off to a bad start, maybe it's going to perform a lot better. I just didn't see the value in it, and I imagine the Kings want to get off to, come out swinging against a triple hunter composition.
But now the question kind of begs is, do the Kings draft another magical jungler like the Poseidon or the Habwa to take it away from the Jade Dragons? Or, I was going to say, do they take the Nemesis away from Sam for Soccer and not allow another one of those carry styles? It seems the Kings are more concerned about that Nemesis than potentially the magical junglers that could come from the Jade Dragon. So it is Nemesis, and then Ymir early on in the draft as well. So the Kings drafting a little bit of their front line early on.
I love this from the Kings. Get Twig on something that can build Golden Blade and run to farm and put genetics back on this pick. That the walls were looking solid. Even though the fact the Kings were down, those walls were on point. Genetics, I think, was playing great. But if you don't ban away that Poseidon, if you don't make sure to pick that Poseidon, it will be going through, and it will, more often than not, be going the same for soccer.
Yeah, something that Sam has really found a lot of favoritism towards this phase between that and the Hot Ball, whichever of those water deities he's been able to pick up in that jungle. But now we go into the second round of bans. Jing Wei was the pick for Netroid last time around, and the Jade Dragons will make sure that he does not get that one. But at least got to force a little bit more change fully in the duo lane. Ho Yi also going to be taken off the table, this time by the Kings.
Yep, that is going to be a completely different duo lane matchup, at least for the Jade Dragons, their whole duo lane, and for the Kings, just Netroid is going to have to play something new here. The Iza going to be taken away, something that the Camelot Kings like to do a fair bit, is that proxy behind the tower. If they do have this Iza, they can clear the wave so efficiently and so quickly, and then they can get ready for that purple buff of invade. So taking that away, probably going to be a smart bet. Will the Kings just make it even more bans against Panda Cat? We'll have to find out. Again, that Chernobog could be flexed, but Final K has just been playing it so much. More often than not, we just assume that that's going to be going into the solo lane. So, I mean, it would be an interesting bet, though, if the Kings just banned all these ADCs, and then Final K's like, actually, I'm going to play like King Arthur or something, and this Chernobog was Panda Cats the whole time.
Right.
Either way, though, the Kings are going to have to think about this one, because obviously they've taken away that Fafnir and that Ho Yi. What else? What other supports are you trying to, cancel out here? You don't want this Ymir. You want this Ymir to have all sorts of pressure, and in that regard, I don't think PBM goes to the Gab or anything like that. Even in a composition where you have all these carries that you want to try and protect, it just doesn't seem like the playstyle he wants to be going for.
Well, one thing that was banned away by the Kings last time around, and maybe something that could be brought up as a topic when it comes to their pick of carries, Freya was banned away by the Kings, something that we kind of saw out of left field more than anything else. So I'm curious to see if maybe that becomes an interesting topic of conversation between those hunters. I mean, Oleron was the #1 magical hunter going into the Masters land. Haven't seen any priority towards him, even with these extra hunter compositions. Instead, it's going to be Serket for that final ban. And then Anhur locked in for the Jade Dragon. So probably still going to be seeing Final K over on that Chernobog.
Yeah, this tells me that Panda Cat is literally, he is only picking hunters to win that 1v1. I want to get ahead. I'm going to get as aggressive as possible. He found the solo kills last time, the solo kill rather, and he's looking to do the same on Anhur. Doesn't really hard carry games late game, doesn't really build into any of these build paths too efficiently. What Anhur does do is bring you tremendous 1v1 fight potential. One impale into the wall, Desert Fury, you're usually going to be able to find a kill here. So Panda Cat trying to get extremely aggressive in that lane. Netroid, no matter what he does pick here in that dual lane, is not going to have a fun time into the Anhur, and it looks like they will just be sending that Uller over to the duo lane, and then just putting BMT on, I'm not going to say his signature Cuckoo, but he does like the Cuckoo.
He's one of the only ones who's still playing this Kukulkan, and also one of the only players playing a Ratatosker variety. Going to be picking up this pick to go over in towards the solo lane this time around. Now, we haven't seen Ratatosker in some time, Trelly. And again, we're only seeing it with the Kings. How does Rat solo kind of fare in this current meta?
I'm extremely excited to see this Ratatosker because, there is a little bit of Rat going on in the ranked scene right now where you go the crit Acorn and just go Deathbringer and go full crit Ratatosker. I do not think that's what we're going to see. I think this is the solo lane Rat. You have two real options in that regard. You either go the Acorn with the double spin, which shreds protections, or the healing one. Either one is going to give you some great late game. You get to sustain a lot and just be super annoying. Global presence again to match that of this Chernobog. If that is going to be the Cherno solo, with right now it seems that way because of the way that they have the Jade Dragons have drafted. You're going to be able to say, oh, the Chernobog's ulting over. I'm going to get as far as I can with the ultimate that Ratatosker has, the global presence, and just be able to sort of match that.
Well, for the final pick of the Jade Dragons, it's going to be Terra going over to PBM. If we're going based off what we saw last time in game #1, this would be Final K taking that Chernobog and the solo Scotty over towards Pagon mid, and the Anhur this time for Panda Cat since the Ho Yi was banned away. And Terra is something that, or at least a pick that we don't see as often. Genetics still seems to show some favoritism towards this god. And for a player like PBM, I mean, how does this god kind of fit towards his playstyle?
I think PBM likes to get very aggressive on this pick, and you know, looking at the matchup, there's not too much that you hate. I will say that the Ymir and the Uller are going to be two prime examples of, you know, stunning out the Terra dash. It's very telegraphed to her kid in the fact that you place your monolith down, and then you have to dash into it to break it. If she gets stunned out of that dash, you don't get the reset, you don't get a second dash, and then your whole engage sort of falls flat. But into this Kukulkan, you know, you're knock-up immune if you put those stones down, so the Spirit of the Nine Winds is not going to be disrupting your engage at all. As long as you have some magical protections built, you never really care about this Cuckoo. So I think it has some decent matchups and then some rough times. As long as PBM is, you know, positioning his monoliths effectively, you can use them to block the Ularax, things like that. I think there's going to be a lot of over-aggression, and, you know, the Kings probably want to build some anti-heal into that.
Well, we've been seeing a lot of stacking kind of come up into the meta as of recent. Things like Warlock Staff, a couple of Book of Thoughts have popped their way into here. And it feels like that's the perfect time to be a Kukulkan. If you're fighting for these late games, if you're not trying to do anything in these kind of early styles of play, it feels like Kukulkan's a great god to do so because you want to build one of the stacking items. Namely the Book of Thoughts, so you can kind of double dip the passive. But we've even seen people forego that item for things like the Warlock. I know I don't want to say it, but it's just what we've seen.
You're right. We have seen the Cuckoo, and we've seen the Warlock Sash and the Karad's Coin, but not the Book of Thoth, and it's just one of the cardinal sins of Smite. You have to be building that Book of Thoth, and you got to be upgrading that Sands of Time into the Pendulum. You got to make sure to get all that power from the mana, but the real question about Cuckoo is always, are you able to land this ultimate? The Spirit of the Nine Winds, very telegraphed, makes a big noise, and it goes in a straight line. If you have CC, which, you know, the Camelot Kings do, I think Rat Knockup is pretty solid. A Blink Freeze from Ymir is always going to be good confirm. The question is, how much value are you getting out of this ultimate? Definitely the best confirmed tool on the map. Of course, Kraken is going to come close, but if you're building Cuckoo right, even the Kraken can't come close to that damage.
Yeah, it's going to be very, kind of a very, I even still want to kind of call it a coin toss between the two secures. I mean, Kraken and Spirit of Nine Winds both going to take a little bit of time to get their actual cast time out there and get their actual hits. So could be seeing some fights around the objective play. But once again, Jade Dragon's going for the triple Hunter comp. Can it work out for them again in game number 2? Let's jump right in and find out.
Jade Dragons versus Camelot Kings. Let's do it maybe one more time if the Jade Dragons have it their way. This will be a 2-0 to start off phase number 2. Camelot Kings, Gore, need to get a little something going here this game. I think it's got to start with Captain Twig. Maybe no fault of his own. Game number 1, it was Sanford Soccer plus Pagon, put the E-set behind. Never really got to see it shine.
Yeah, First Blood, you can probably bounce back from eventually. Second Blood is a little more difficult from that point forward. And then I think eventually, it took, 10 more minutes. But then the third time, put in the ground, it really stopped that E-set from being able to flourish into anything. This time around, you could almost potentially see the inverse. It's really weird to try and think about like what's going to hit harder, a Kukulkan and a Nemesis versus a Poseidon Scotty. I think a couple more slows, maybe more damage potential still there for the Dragons, but a lot less kill potential, right? Tings is going to be able to play further back. Twig has a double dash into shield. So most of these engagements early on, you're immediately set up for at least survival early on. Then it comes down to the small questions. I trust everybody else in this matchup, actually everything on the Kings. I've seen it all work before, right? This is a comp that I wouldn't be surprised if they played this exact thing last year at some point. The Ratatoskr feels really good for variety. Twig feels good on Nemesis. Tings was one of the only ones and still makes it work there on the Kukulkan. So I'm not really sweating too much about what the Kings have to offer.
Agreed. The Kukulkan setup from Twig's style of draft is something that the Kings made work, especially at the beginning of last year when this Kings team wasn't fully in LAN. So you had to deal with ping. This was a style of composition that the Kings were able to make work even given those circumstances. So I like it. Back to the roots of the team, whether or not it works out, ultimately play on field, of course, but the setup, the knockdown, all of it's there from the Camelot Kings. But the Jade Dragons have some of it as well. Before we move away from the Kings, though, I do want to talk about this Ratatoskr, particularly in being able to mirror what FineOK was able to do, right?
Yeah.
It's global versus semi-global, but Variety not forced to go teleport here early on in this lane, specifically for rotating out level 5. Should be able to keep pace with FineOK a little bit.
And what I'm really interested in is Variety's build choice, right? Because we saw from what FineOK built last time, there was some power, the Transcendence into immediately the Atalantas, into the Fail Not, right? A lot of crit, a lot of attack speed, a lot of I'm going to hit hard and I'm going to try to do it as fast as I can. Variety has played this in metas where you want to build tankier. And so, you know, Acorn Shorts, it's something that we hardly ever have to talk about because most of the time it was like, all right, this is the Acorn you go on Rat. But if you want to go tankier, you've got 2 options on one side. If you want crit, you've got an option. So I'm curious what Variety wants out of this pick in this like 9-5 meta. What do you do right now as a Ratatoskr solo? Do you try to match the damage? Do you go for that tank style that we've seen in the past, knowing that you can get in, get out, and you're a great initiator?
Oh, Emblem used by Mike. Spreads a little slow out to the Camelot Kings, but looks like just fine now. Panda Cat doesn't have the abilities of the rotation out to be able to capitalize. Fun fact about me, and this is probably not a good fun fact. I actually, like, only a few months ago realized that you could upgrade Rat's Acorn from anywhere. And I'll have to hold that thought because Genetics is stunned in place and a pillar's down from Mike. Sanford Soccer and Captain Twig are over on this side of the map. Panda Cat has already used his jump. Nice stun on a Netrioid, but it won't be enough. And Captain Twig sends pressure left. And the Camelot Kings are able to grab first blood.
That leap goes forward. I see Twig, and it's like, okay, never mind. I know where this fight's going already, and unfortunately, it is not Panda Cat's way. They do still have some presence, but I mean, good freeze, good presence from Genetics just to exist here is going to slow things down. I mean, even if you lose Genetics, it's a carry for a support. You're more than happy. He gets out, you're even better, right? You feel, I think, very successful there if you're the Kings. Really good pull for your favor. You get first blood over onto your jungler. Notably, we were highlighting Twig earlier because he had fallen behind in game 1. This is exactly the kind of position you want to put Twig in for game number 2 to find success.
Yep. Nemesis playmaking style pick, able to get that golden blade. This is what Twig likes to do in the jungle, as we had the junglers in for our media day the other day. It's exactly what he looks for.
It's the inverse, too. The golden blade finish now for the Nemesis, as opposed to Sam having the one who struggled on the Cursed Orb as opposed to the Doom Orb.
Of course, a little bit different Poseidon rather than
Eset.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Think about it. You've got an ability that clears. Granted, your Whirlpool is different than like Spirit Ball and Wing Gust.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you've got one big ultimate that's usually used for objective security.
No.
Oh my god!
Sam for Soccer walks into it, but won't walk out. And the Camelot Kings are doing exactly what the Jade Dragons did in game 1, funneling pressure through the jungle.
Yeah.
And Captain Twig off to a fantastic start, 2-0. And we do get a bit of an update. Thick Bark Acorn be the option here for Variety. So tankiness, name of the game.
Here's why I like this Acorn. And it's ignore literally anything on there outside of the plus 10% protections. That's just a cool thing to get.
Yeah.
Again, it means you can get really tanky. I think we saw, and this is going to be a throwback, but in Season 7, Raffer ran the green Acorn where it's a lot more health-based, and you can get tanky that way. Then you change up some of your itemizations. I know like Oni Hunter's Garb was in the build, things like that. But this is going to allow you to, especially against a relatively physical heavy comp, go ahead and grab up a lot of that, 1 to 2 items. All of a sudden, you're super tanky because of that number. And percentages in Smite go hard, so it is going to feel pretty effective. Still going to take a little bit here for Variety to maybe feel like the full fruition, but that's the King's gameplay, right? If right now Twig is ahead, which a 2-0 Nemesis seems to be ahead, then you do get the patience that you want for your side lanes to let them get the items online.
That's really good. Like by the end of the game, the 10% is, potentially like an item's worth of protections by the end of the game. That's actually pretty solid.
So, yeah, like 300 protections gets you 30 more prots. So you're just at there you go. And it's like you said,
like a cheap prot item at that point.
If you decide, and it gives Variety such a...
Say Variety.
I was going to say variety of choices because...
An option, right.
He can drop stuff.
Man, Sanford Soccer should go down here. Captain Twig on a killing spree. The Camelot Kings needed their jungler to go big. And in the first 6 minutes of game number 2, that's exactly what is happening. The Nemesis flips sides, but continues to find success.
And so far, I really like the presence. I mean, even here, right? Like, yeah, you're maybe not going to be able to steal those, but you have a level advantage. What are they going to do? How are they going to fight you?
In and out of the wall goes fine. Okay, beats get used. Blue buff now pulled by the Camelot Kings on the invade. It looks like Genetics willing to sacrifice the ultimate.
I love that.
No chance for Fine OK to out-confirm, but what is happening here? Ultimate in. This is the chance for the Jade Dragons to pull back a bit of this early game. Genetics throws up the wall. But Captain Twig is rotated out of mid and got another kill on the Pagon. And it is a consolation prize for the Jade Dragons, who get one onto Genetics, but on the rotation out of mid, Captain Twig adds his 4th. Could be a 5th. with one more dash, and Captain Twig has got a delayed double. He's on a rampage in the first 7 minutes. It's all on Twig now. This guy is on a warpath in the first 7 minutes of game number 2. He's got 5 kills.
I don't think I have to say this explicitly, but I'm going to. That was better for the Kings.
It was,
like,
yeah.
easiest blanket statement of my life. You lose genetics for blue buff invade, you get a ton of kills, all 5 of them are on your jungler. And when you kill genetics, like, you have to look at the levels when this happens, right? Because yes, it's the first kill for the Dragons, feels pretty good. The only person who really benefits from that would be Mike because he's closer in level. Otherwise, like, it's still going to be some gold, still some experience, but not as worthwhile as getting the kill as, you know, Twig got onto Pagon or Twig got onto Sam. And so immediately you get more worthwhile there. And, you know, I had called it out, but I love, like, Genetics getting aggressive, using his ult to steal buff camps because, like, Ymir ult locks you in one place, and when you're against Hunters, that feels awful. So you want to just use it for whatever you can. I like that they're playing the map. I mean, very similar to what you were saying in Game 1. They're just taking what they can, scooping up whatever gold is available for themselves. And if it puts just one person and it's your support into a compromising position, then it's not really the worst-case scenario, especially if Twig can come in and clean up like it's nothing.
Genetics doing just fine with the 1 death, giving Captain Twig a little bit of assistance on his way to the rampage that has found us here in Game 2. Jade Dragons have not fallen that far behind as far as gold goes. Just 1,000 or so in the first few minutes of this game. Experience, again, largely for Captain Twig here. He's got a 2-level lead. Polar Bear Mike dodges out. The Spirit of the 9 wins. Into the Cosmos goes Variety. Don't think he'll dunk down on anyone in particular. Maybe Fine OK under a bit of threat here. Does get knocked up. Not enough damage to fully threaten out the Chernobog, who'll be able to back away under the Tier 1 tower. I love this, though, from the Camelot Kings, though, Gore. I mean, you're 9 minutes in. You've got a fantastic lead out of the jungle, 2 levels. Keep funneling pressure there. Let's walk into the Jade Dragon side of the map, see what we can get done. The Dragons, the only answer right now is to back away. As Panda Cat looks for a 1v1 Netroid, but comes up just a bit short.
I'm going to talk about Tings.
Yeah, please.
Because it's so difficult to decide where to start. First and foremost, well, right now Genetics is getting chased down. I don't know if he's... Even if he dies, I don't know if it matters too much. That's a good wall he had to separate things. And that can bring me back over towards the mid lane because of where this pressure is happening. This is something the Dragons need, but it's so difficult because you've got this cool con. Tings was playing this 2 years ago on ping and still hitting every ult. You're playing it last year on ping, still hitting every ult, right? And so you get this incredible player now on LAN able to just launch these ults, and like the 2 we've seen so far have been amazing. And now we've got to look at where his build has gone because he's gone straight into the stacking items, no starter right now. And so immediately the Book of Thoth already stacked up, gives a good power spike because of his passive, then into the Warlock, so he's going to become even more difficult, I think, to kill because of the health that he's going to be gaining. And you're really starting to look at someone who is going to hit very hard. 95 power on that Warlock's 80 here. And then you factor in, I can't remember the exact conversion rate. I should know the number. The 1,000 mana from the passive gives a good chunk. I want to say 80 power off the top of my head, but I'm not sure. Either way, it's insane how strong this Kukulkan is going to be and how difficult it feels like for the Dragons just in the mid lane to try and counteract that.
Agreed. Big Man Tings has already hit a couple that have looked good. And then you're considering Gore objective secure. Of course, the Des talked about Kraken versus Spirit of the 9 wins. How will that impact this game? Polar Bear Mike having to dash away, unable to do so as the tornado damage from BMT continues the run for the Camelot Kings. Pagon able to avoid the damage. Zephyr connects onto the jaw of the Scotty, though, and a good wall from Genetics slows down the escape beads used. But Captain Twig searching for his 6th. Will be able to find it. Decent Kraken out of the jungle from Sanford Soccer, but the numbers are just not there from the Jade Dragons. This will be a rundown, but Sanford Soccer limps away. Genetics and Netroid do as well. Maybe Panda Cat and Final K could make a difference here. Variety over on the wrong side of the map.
Yeah, this should... Yeah, okay, I wanted to wait, because you never know with the Ratatosker. Even when the ult's down, the beads were there, you've got the sovereignty. Feels like it was a recipe for some sort of slippery shenanigans to happen. But yeah, it goes over to Fino, you get a kill. It keeps that lane even. but you're still losing out. But honestly, more in the mid lane, I think, right now than you are in the jungle. I think that you're still getting some presence from Sam, although you can really start to see already the difference in the gold, the farm that has been going the way of Twig. When you're 6-0, you're already up technically 1 tier 3 over a tier 2, and then a tier 2 on top of that. So you've got a lot more than what Sam's got going on. But the damage right now from Tings is just more than a Scotty can provide, right? Yep. You throw down your tornado, and you've got a do not play zone that the Dragons just have to avoid and worry about. And the way they've been collapsing into these fights, the Dragons are getting funneled into the damage that the Kings want. It's making it easier for them to find the kills. And so far, it has given them a very, I would even argue, Dragons-esque start to the game. It has been very rapid fire.
Well, if you're a Dragons fan, you're happy that the gold lead is still not that hefty. Just 700 or so, and a lot of it out of the jungle. Again, the experience largely out of the jungle. So if the Jade Dragons can play through other avenues on this map, still an opportunity to come back. That said, everywhere that Captain Twig goes is just a zone of threat. Wherever that nemesis is on the map, the Jade Dragons just don't have a lead to contest with it. Not just yet. Panda Cat frozen out, uses the beads, cracking up on an Etrioid. Desert Fury, yeah, that's a simple kill for the Jade Dragons. And a jungle kill now for Sanford Soccer, a second of the game. Pythag's piece after Doom Orb. And so some decent damage, good utility from Sanford Soccer in the first few minutes.
And I think it's a pick, and maybe even a draft. I want to go out on that limb. I mean, Hunters, late game, hit really hard no matter what, right? You get the items online, it's still going to be there. So some of these deaths you can kind of maybe gloss over, specifically there in mid lane. You get this Poseidon feeling pretty comfortable, at least keeping up with Twig. I mean, 6-0, you've got a little bit of a level experience over what Sam has, but otherwise that's about it. I think if you can get Sam to stay afloat in this game, the rest of the comp rises with it. It all is dependent on whether or not this mage sinks, right? If it starts to go under and Sam can't get anything done, then maybe Panda, Pagon, or Fine can find some kills and carry. But if it's doing well in late game team fights, that's going to help slow down the Nemesis. It's going to help peel for variety in some circumstances, or it's going to find really good damage onto Tings and Netroid. So I think the opening for Sam, if they can continue on this route, is going to be great for him, because gold lead at this point isn't that big. Like, the Kings have been doing a lot, and they've been controlling a lot, and I like the way they're playing this game. But I think the Dragons are being more proactive.
Looking towards Netroid, who will jump away, but Genetics in behind. It's going to be a tower dive. Perfect Aegis from Netroid to avoid the Kraken, but the Desert Fury hits its target at the end of the day anyway. An ultimate in from Fine OK sends all of the Jade Dragons to the left side of the map. Nemel down onto Panda Cat, and the on her back to Fountain. But now Captain Twig used the beads. He's on chase, looking for Fine OK. Used the sprint, beads out from him and Pagon as well. Variety dashes forward as the Jade Dragons back their way into a wall from Genetics. Certainly no tower dive, but big man Ting still has that Spirit of the Nine Winds. It's the ace up the sleeve of the Camelot Kings. It looks like 1 for 1, both Hunters down, both teams will back away.
And this is just good, I want to say, aggression. Unfortunately, losing Netroid doesn't feel great. Burning Netroid's relics feels good for the Dragons as well. So, good kill for them. But I don't know, again, how hurt you are by this if you're the Kings. Really, right now, it's just been this lack of a tangible gold lead for them, right? A lot of the lead they've had has been just for the jungle. Yeah, that Gold Fury is going to help a lot. And again, if you can get to a point where you have this amount of control every team fight, the Dragons do have a late game fight that will hurt if they get there. It's all about timing at this point and little things like that. How well is Mike going to be able to tank up at this point, right? Only a level behind, and not even a full level at that from where Genetics is. Only a little bit of gold behind. Technically has the item advantage over where Genetics is right now. But Ymir's also just the tankiest Guardian in the game, so that tends to help out no matter what.
Does help.
I think a lot of where I'm going to continue looking outside of just Sam is whether or not Pagon can resist the
This would be a massive shutdown if the Dragons can get in. Fine OK grabs the shutdown. Already a bit ahead of Variety, and that is going to widen the gap over in Soul Lane. Jade Dragons find their target. And a nice gold spike for Fine OK over on right. That's like a...
Look at how much that was.
That's like a decent...
They took half a Gold Fury away.
It's like 700 or so gold that Fine OK was able to grab back. And a bit of what I was saying earlier was wrong. There of course, is the gold and the XP discrepancy in the jungle. But maybe even more of it has actually funneled through mid, where Big Man Ting's 104 has been able to outfarm Pagon, who's 0-2 up to this point, 2-level lead for BMT. As Kukulkan continues to be that X factor, where Pagon has just got to hope to stay afloat, because the relative immobility of the Scotty has been punished just a bit. Pyromancer stolen by genetics, I guess. Camelot Kings able to get it on a fadeaway despite 4 members of the Jade Dragons being there. A small moment that's maybe more frustrating than anything else, but what a play from the Camelot Kings.
Yeah, not having to use something like Ting's ult for that means that you're not like stressed all of a sudden about a Fire Giant play or anything like that. In fact, you have a lot of team fight potential right here in mid. You can zone out away from the tower. Just continue putting gold into your pockets. And that's brings me back. You had mentioned Ting's. And looking at the farm, not just like in terms of experience, you know, being 1-0-4 already helps. Having 2 fully stacked items helps. There's a conversation, I know people like to argue of like, do you put your starter item in like your first slot or swap it to the second? Like you buy something, then your starter.
Yeah, how about fourth?
Yeah, fourth. And also it feels like something that if you're Ting's here, most of the time if you don't go a starter, what you'll do later on is like sell something you got super early on and then buy the full upgrade. Here it almost feels like because you're buying it fourth, that like the upgrade is what is on your mind at this point. Your goal is, what can I do to hit 20? Maybe like the base stats aren't bad, right? It's why starter items are so good, but you're already 18, so just keep farming up. You're going to have enough gold you can back, and then maybe you can upgrade that, or you can go into a magic focus, which gives him, again, he's going to be getting a lot of penetration depending on where he goes from this, but either way, with this build, that ult is going to hurt, and it's going to hurt a lot.
Well, and when you look at all of the targets, and anyone but Mike is going to be 120% of magical power plus 800 at max rank on top of that. Feels just fine to me, Gormizer.
Yes. You smile really hard whenever that connects.
Right. And again, it's on anyone really but Mike. Of course you like it on Mike, but Mike, who's got...
He's got some props.
He's got Oni, he's got the robe there, and so he'll still get hurt. But the squishy members of the Jade Dragons, which are the other 4 effectively, will get look at what that Zephyr did to Pagon. It's like a fifth of his health bar, a sixth of his health bar. So really, if Big Man Tings can connect, you know, it's similar to a raw ult, Yana snipe, those sorts of things. Same idea. Who knows? If the Jade Dragons claw their way back into this game, all it takes is one big play from Big Man Tings to totally flip that around. And then you look at the setup. Genetics has been pretty on point with the walls up to this point. Captain Twig with a slow has been enough setup in the past for Big Man Tings. The Camelot Kings have a lot to get excited about as well moving into the later stages of this game. Captain Twig able to sidestep the stun for Mike, and Panda Cat will pick up his purple buff. One dash blocked out by Genetics' wall. And now Polar Bear Mike has to drop the Earthen Fury as an ultimate from Captain Twig connects as well. Jade Dragons might send Fine-OK over to this fight. In fact, they do. Onto the wall he goes. Kraken and no good. That's a big ultimate missing. Now by the Jade Dragons, and Sanford Soccer may just be missing in general. There's a Spirit of the Nine Winds. Knocks down Sanford Soccer, and the Kings find a pick.
That Twig blink was just too good for Sam. Unfortunate for him, the Whirlpool, it didn't get the tick, so it didn't stop him. And that blink was just great reaction timing from Twig. Gets him out of trouble and turns that entire fight around. I mean, Sam had to go so deep to try and find that setup. And so the turnaround was already immediately easier for the Kings. And then they get a kill on top of that, locking him down. They burn a lot of relics. The meditation was something I was going to talk about for Mike, but like they're very heavy-handed in the sustain right now. And it's not been helping them too much, right? I mean, we haven't gotten to see a lot of scenarios for the Terra ult to be on the team. We haven't seen a lot of scenarios where the med is able to maybe change anything. And I think it's still going to come into play, because even though it's been a great fight so far from the Kings, it's not as massive a lead as I personally expect every time I look up. But it's enough that at this point, I'm starting to sweat if I'm the Dragons. Like, I'm starting to think, oh man, like they are going to force us to game 3 if we don't shape up. It's going to be around this FG. And you don't have a lot of time, really, to work with.
Variety will get up onto the branch and crash down over on the other side of solo lane. Camelot Kings, again, you can almost at will pull this objective. You're 4,000 or so gold ahead. Got 2 levels in mid. Again, 2 levels in jungle, so that's grown back for Captain Twig. And Big Man Ting's opting for more percent pen. Gets some with the Warlock staff, and then, of course, health-based damage with the Soul Reaver. Finishes off Pendulum of Ages. Ends up being Tier 2 Obshard there, Gore. Yep. A fantastic Tier 2 item for Big Man Ting. So where we're talking about Mike being able to take some of those Spirit of the Nine Winds on the chin.
Nope.
Yeah, that's not going to
anymore.
be the case for much longer. And I suppose you're not quite as worried about flat pen for all the squishies. Like, they're going to get shredded by that ultimate anyway. And this is just Big Man Ting's pouring more damage into the fight. How about that? Panicat evaporates. Spirit of the Nine Winds right down Main Street. Half of Mike's damage, half of his health is gone, and Captain Twig snags the double. That's a fight for the Camelot Kings and should be an FG.
And this is how I want to word it. Look at their health bars. That was an easy fight for the Kings. That, like, they didn't, like, there was a point I saw genetics popping off in the player cam while they were moving forward, and that was, like, maybe the hardest work they had to do. Most of it, you know, you're funneled in the jungle, you're in this narrow pathway. It's a dream if you're Tings. Twig gets aggressive, you got good freezes. I mean, that was just the perfect setup for the Kings to find what they did, and their comp played perfectly into it. You know, we keep going back to this Kukulkan, but I think that Twig has to be mentioned as well. The amount of damage that they're getting out from that just to the jungle and your mid laner is insane. But then you got 7 assists over there on Netroid. Netroid's not playing right now for how do I get all the hyper carry kills and put people on my back. He's just going to sling a hail of arrows out there, shoot out a bladed arrow, and then be fine throughout the fight. Look for a stun afterward, maybe jump away if things get hairy. I think this is a really good position for the Kings. And that might even be an understatement. This is a phenomenal position for the Kings. It's just going to be about sieging. And I think that they have a really good siege potential. Maybe a little slower just because they're not 3 hunters like we saw last game. But Variety's going to be able to tank up. Genetics is going to be able to tank up these towers. So they're not worried too much about like having to trade them and the damage that's going to be coming out. And then once Nestroid's over there, you've got the tank or the tower killer, right, and you've got a huge zoner in Ting, so you don't have to worry too much about the dragons maybe stepping outside of the Phoenix line. I think even Tier 2's, you know, trying to go for a defense around there. Maybe on left you can, but it feels almost too risky for the dragons. Right. I actually prefer maybe just letting the Kings have it.
Yeah, Big Man Tings. We were wondering how much damage Mike truly would be taking from a Spirit of the Nine Winds. And it was
a lot.
Exactly half of his health bar. Big Man Tings looking for a little flat pen rather on the back end of his build. We're going to send a lot towards Captain Twig for the Dragons, but Twig will happily sidestep most of it and get out alive. Polar Bear Mike has been sitting on the same itemization for a minute, and that'll extend out a little bit longer as Big Man Tings knocks him down once more. Killing spree for the Kukulkan. And these are worrying moments for the Jade Dragons, depending on whether you lose somebody else or not. Beads used by Variety. Left side, Phoenix will be the casualty.
We got to talk about, you know, Kukul is a giant rectangle, and Mike was on the far right corner. Like, it barely touches him, but it's enough to get the kill. And realistically, a lot of the damage prior to that, that was just the finisher. It didn't even do too much outside of get the kill. Other than that, it's these tornadoes that are doing so much, and you have to be worried about that as the carries as well. You step forward into any of those, and Tings is going to be able to follow up with his effort. You're just dead. You're not going to survive through too much. And so I think that where the Dragons are at, like you said, worried is the only expression I can imagine at this point. You're getting your builds online. We're starting to see a little more crit. It's failed. The fail not there. The Atalantis is already online there for Fine OK. You know, you've got the pin coming out from the Scotty, although I haven't seen much of it matter too much in the face of what the Kings are throwing at them. And then Panda Cat has theoretically the damage in the auto attacks, but it's all in the setup.
We have not seen that. We have not seen damage from Panda Cat yet this game.
In fact, I wonder where they are on the charts, like just in general for like damage.
Low. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty low. I mean, just 3,000 below Netroid, but the fact that they're trailing so far, I think is not really, at least from what I'm seeing. I don't know if I even blame Panda Cat for that number.
No, I mean,
I don't think they can get close enough to get the damage out there because Mike dies so fast.
This has just not been a dual lane-sided game. Everything has been happening in mid, over towards right. Netroid has been able just to walk around with his squad. Panda Cat's had to leave a good bit of the time. More of a result of the situation rather than anything Panda Cat particularly has done wrong. More what the Camelot Kings have been doing right. And you'd imagine you're in the dying moments of this game if you're the Camelot Kings. 15,000 gold. I didn't realize it had gotten that bad. 15,000 gold for the Camelot Kings. Left side Phoenix gone. Mid lane open. Entangling wings. Doesn't matter. That's one dead Poseidon with a minute left on the Fire Giant cooldown as the actual buff falls off. It's an interesting choice for the Kings. Do you push the one-man advantage, or do you start to ward up for FG? It looks like the latter ends up being the answer.
Yeah, it's that you have that
Unless-
weird balancing point. Fire Giant spawns in a minute, which feels like
Whose ward is that?
eons at this point. The one right next to him should be theirs. I can't see because the speed buff timer on the mini-map. I have a feeling it's theirs because look, there's no reason Fine OK would be up there
Yeah,
otherwise.
Fine OK wouldn't have known otherwise. Ultimate up. Should be a dead Fine OK here in just a moment. Mike just has to watch from the sidelines. Where did Fine OK go? Somewhere else. Somehow gets out of it. It's Mike who ends up dying, but now there's only 3 members of the Jade Dragons left on the map. This might be
2.
Exactly what the Camelot Kings were hoping for. Fine OK chunked down onto the wall he goes and out, but Variety's still there and waiting. And the Camelot Kings now with a 2-man advantage rather, considering an end. But instead, we'll just take the mid lane Phoenix.
Look, I'm used to them playing a little more, I'm going to call it methodical, because that sounds more
Cautious.
polite than what I was going to say. You have so much damage. You've been, again, maybe the polite term, maybe not the polite term, thrashing the Dragons up to this point in team fights. I think even with Mike respawning, they probably could have pressed into the Titan. It might have been, again, the issue of all it takes is one really big play from
Right.
like Pagon and Panda, or a good Kraken from Sam, and you're funneling into the Titan room, so it becomes a lot easier. Now you get the Fire Giant, which feels really good. And what do you have to worry about? Fine, okay, in 10 seconds. Did you see what you just did to him? Like, I don't think they're worried about this at all. In fact, 5-on-5 is more so being courteous to the Dragons.
Variety jumps on Panda Cat, who has to use the beads deep in the back line. Polar Bear Mike has a root. And right side Phoenix actually still lives here. Just need Netrioid to send some damage its way as the Jade Dragons are being chunked down by the poke of the Camelot King. Spear of the Nine Winds awaits, but not used just yet by Big Man Tings. The way I look at it, Gore, is like it's maybe a 90% chance of winning the game on a Titan Siege there. But you get the Fire Giant, you back off, you get all 3 Phoenixes, soon to be once the left side dies off again. All that down. Now it's like a 99%. You know, you're increasing your odds just a little bit. Could the Kings have won? Absolutely. Are you basically confirming that you win now, barring a miraculous fumble? Also, yes. So the Camelot Kings, yes, cautious. But I think have basically now just sealed the deal on game number 2.
Yeah, I think this is one that, and I'm trying to figure out where it comes down. Because if you look at game number 1, I guess the correlation between the two teams, the loss in game 1, the loss in game 2, is that the Magic jungler has just not done anything for the team that is
10-1-4.
wildly
My goodness.
prevalent, right? Like,
Yeah.
and a lot of that has been, you know, Sam, I think he got a couple of good kills early on, more than the ESET did in game 1. But still not enough to help his team. Versus, you know, Twig, this game has just been running the show in the jungle, had dictated the first 10 minutes of this game. And, you know, whether that's a physical versus magical thing, whether it's a nemesis versus everybody else thing, I guess we can see in game 3. I was going to say, though, maybe a little bit has to do with, you know, Variety being able to go in. This Rat having as much health as they do and doing as much damage as they did is impressive. And I think having that secondary front line helps enhance even more what was already a successful comp for the Kings.
Much better look across the board for the Camelot Kings. On the verge of sending us to a game number 3. Third Phoenix on the map goes down, and the Kings surge forward with a minute and a half left on this FG buff. Everyone's got their ultimates. Everyone has their relics. Just missing beads for Panda Cat on the Jade Dragons. But yeah, if you're the Kings, just drop your Tornado. I mean, somebody's got to be there to keep it pulled. You can drop a Tornado. Spear of the Nine Winds will half health the Titan at this point. Fine OK nearly goes down. But now Captain Twig looking for the backline dive. He walks through everyone of the Jade Dragons and gets the kill on the Fine OK. Spear of the Nine Winds chunks down the Titan. Kraken just a bit shy of any sort of impact. And the Camelot Kings on the back of an 11-1-4 performance from Twig send us to a game 3.
Yeah, that's just good play from them, right? I think that what you get out of the Kings from pretty much the onset of that game is proactive play, you know, even more so. We're used to talking about the Kings playing the map really well. We're used to talking about the Kings getting all of the big objectives, all the neutral objectives, and holding on to that.
Yep.
getting a lot of kills early on is something that it kind of flips every single game, right? Sometimes they're in that control, sometimes they're not. This time around, you get a lot of pressure from Twig immediately. That then immediately lends into the Kukulkan in mid, and suddenly your tanks don't matter because this guy's still shredding them. You know, that guy's over here, you know, popping the ult, get a Spirit of the Nine Winds through. And when they started playing in those narrow jungle corridors, that was just an immediate buff to big man things. I don't know if you can, in good conscience, in the first 3 ban a Kukulkan, but that is something that I think went really well for the Kings, and if they can get the right bodies around it, I wouldn't be upset seeing them go back to.
During our jungler media day the other day, somebody brought up with Captain Twig the story of being a facilitator-style jungle, and Twig goes, this storyline again. I don't like just being called a facilitator. An 11-1 game on a NEM. It's a bit of a carry-style performance from Captain Twig. Camelot Kings even the score. Tiebreaker, Game 3, coming up next.
But he had the horsey, and horsey, don't you stop! Fido King! Fido King!
I gave up dabbing for Lynn.
Cool. No more dabbing for Final Call. He looked at me and said, I'm going to be on that stage next year. I'm going to become a world champion.
Ripping through! Titan down, ball 3! A double kill myself!
Through dripping Aquafina, I'm sipping 15, kept a weapon on me. Blow make digits, I'm on my business, stack chicken like what it's gon' be. Crew in the cut, hey, you want us red run when I tell a peace. Love is love. Love is love. Adios. Bendo with the switch again. Boy deliver like he happening. Core with digits, give him estimates. Somersaults for my Benjamins. I got what you need, baby. Skirt the Chevy, make a scene, baby. LABB been the team, baby. Bim bim papa, word to G, baby, look. Labs till I'm finished, had a handful of lemons through the hand. Got a bag, now the hands in the business. For my hand, it's a ticket, talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it. I've been playing with the minutes that they been shoulda gave. And I'm flipping every digit that they been shoulda paid. Had to find a way to get it, no, this isn't what you made. If I ever wanna dip, then I'm brink with the blade. And I'm brinking a blink on the brink of some dumb shit. Watch how I move, cause I know the brink's coming. Watch for the blues, cause I know that they dumping. Nothing in my view, so it's hush on discussion. Hush on discussions, you know what you need to. I keep it in the fam to let you know that I don't need you. Y'all cats be see-through, heading out to peace. You been king, I'm regal, got it in my Abisu. Came through tripping Aquafina, I'm sipping 15, kept a weapon on me. Flow make digits, I'm on my business. Stack chicken like what it's gon' be. Crew in the cut, hey, you want us red run when I tell her peace. Love is love. Love is love. Hold up with it, got my back on Pippin. I'm back in kitchens with the tray. Windows tinted like how black my skin is. Scoop the shorty in it from a J. Swish, she got vision just like any women giving me the kitten. Way before the riches, nothing more to mention. I could light a block, a pot of aura glisten. Boring on my body, that's Agora linen. I came through tripping Aquafina, I'm sipping 15, kept a weapon on me. Flow make digits, I'm on my business. Stack chicken like what it's gon' be. Crew in the cut, hey, you want us red run when I tell her peace. Love is love. Love is love. Adios. Love is love. Love is love. Adios. Love is love. Love is love. Adios.
Welcome back, Smite fans. Game number 2 is done, and the Camelot Kings are going to bring us into game number 3. And Season 9 of the SPL wouldn't be complete without our good friends over at Alienware for coming back and being a sponsor yet again. So make sure that you check out our friends Alienware over on their social media at Alienware on both Twitter and Instagram, and go to alienwarearena.com. See all the cool stuff they have to offer to you. Check out all the PCs that our pros are playing on the Aurora Ryzen 10 desktop, and you can also go to our new splash link at smitegame.com/Alienware and use our brand new code that we have out there, which is AWSmite09, to see all the cool stuff that we have to offer for you, the fans at home. Thank you so much one more time to Alienware for coming back in Season 9 of the SPL. And as I said earlier on, Camelot Kings able to just kind of drag this game up from game number 1, a complete 180, a flip of the script for these guys. And they're able to come back off the back of Captain Twig, who was part of the struggle in game number 1 for the Camelot Kings. This time starting off with was like a 5-0 start within 7 minutes of the game.
I mean, all is right in the world, right? Twig's back on the Golden Blade style junglers and just was fragging, obviously. Went about 11-0 and something at the end. BMT was playing cuckoo and actually built the double stack and got himself the Book of Thought, and that's what I wanted to see. And Ullr's back in the duo lane. All is right in the world as far as I'm concerned. Netroid was playing the Ullr. I will say, Variety back on the Rad. It feels like just some good old Camelot Kings drafts, and it worked out for them. I mean, it worked out very well.
Yeah, they were able to really rally behind each other this time around and find themselves a victory in game number 2 that's going to put the Jade Dragons on the back foot, and maybe now they have to come up with a couple questions of their own. It's something that coming into game number 2, we were wondering, okay, what changes do the Kings need to make to adapt the Dragons? Well, it was to go back to this very King style of play, put Captain Twig on a traditional style of carry jungler, put BMT on one of his signature mid lane picks, even throw Netroid back on another hunter out there, and Camelot Kings were able to run with it this time around. Now the question goes back over to the Jade Dragons. Do you run this same style of comp for yourself a 3rd time in a row? And if you do you now force the Camelot Kings to make some new adjustments?
Yeah, it's interesting because it seemed like the nemesis in game number 1, where obviously Sanford Soccer was piloting it worked very well because they went for this hard physical draft. Obviously, the Camelot Kings took the Nemesis away, but they had the Poseidon this time, so they didn't really need that physical damage shred. But what they did, unfortunately, miss out on was how much engage this Nemesis brought. Obviously, Captain Twig was able to, get so much success, and it helped out the whole team as a whole very early on. And they just weren't really able to match that pressure. Final K found some kills here and there on this Chernobyl. It wasn't like they were completely shut out, but really weren't able to get the ball rolling there in the objective play. And just the team fights as a whole went the way of the Camelot Kings super hard that game.
And I think an important thing to come from the Game 1 draft to the Game 2 was, again, Ullr was still a top pick for the Camelot Kings, where in Game number 1, it went to the mid laner, BMT. didn't really have as much success as it does now going over to Netroid and Captain Twig, moving from that mage to a more traditional assassin in that lane. So it does show that the Kings can still top pick this Ullr and make sure that it has a little bit of flexibility. Now it begs the question for the Jade Dragons of, do they need to maybe try and top pick something like this Nemesis a little bit earlier on? Because I don't really see the Kings being much of a Scotty team, if I'm being honest, Trelly.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that's a fair way of putting it.
I think so. Nemesis was the option last time around. We'll jump into the picks and bans for game number 3 and see if that one ends up changing up. Maybe a Nemesis ban, so that way neither team have it. That way the Jade Dragons can still go with what they have been finding success on up into the past. Camelot Kings, their first ban will still be this Fafnir, so not going to let PBM have an option to run the game with that Guardian.
It looks like more bans heading the way of Genetics. The Jade Dragons probably want to keep that Khepri out of his hands as well, so I imagine that ban will follow suit. But what will be that third ban is the question. Obviously, the Kings know that the Jade Dragons are putting that pressure onto the Chernobog. They haven't really cared to ban it away, and seeing as Final K has had a pretty good performance every time, they're just not really concerned about that solo lane with the matchups that Variety has been having into it. So we'll have to see if that's something that they want to try and ban away. Given the fact that they've been found so much success, they are just going to ban away the Ullr this time around, which is interesting because they're the ones who have been taking it away. You mentioned it early on, also like a pseudo ban, right? Because obviously the Jade Dragons put a lot of pressure on that, presence and pressure on that Ullr pick. So them picking it was nice because they didn't have to ban it away. I guess the Kings are tired of playing it, and they're just like, we're just going to ban this away. We don't want to play it, and we don't want you to play it for sure.
Does leave a lot open, though. Mercury, namely, was the god that was being banned away by the Camelot Kings prior, so it could be something that maybe Captain Twig looks to pick up for himself if that is left open. That leaves a lot of questions for the Jade Dragons. Do they ban the Khepri for the third game in a row to keep that one out of Genetics' hand and avoid having to worry if it goes to a second? Do they ban the Mercury and now risk that Khepri going over into that first pick for the Camelot Kings? So Jade Dragons have a tough decision to make, though there are still plenty of gods out there in the meta. The Chernobog will still be up one way or the other, no matter which one that gets banned away with. But I got to imagine for the Camelot Kings, their eyes are probably going to be on either the Mercury or the Khepri, whichever is left open here.
I imagine if the Khepri gets through, the Kings take Khepri and the Jade Dragons get the Merc, and that's going to be a pretty good trade. We'll have to see which one they care about more, Mercury or Khepri. Ymir is going to be the option. So the Jade Dragons could grab Merc Khep right now. And I'd be surprised if they didn't do that. Chernobog, sure, will still be on the table, but one of those has to be taken here. If not, Mercury will be the option. Like, I didn't even think about this. They don't have to grab Khepri because the Ymir's already locked in. They're much bigger brain than me. I would have immediately been like, oh, they gave us Khepri, quick, lock it in before they ban it. You still got one more pick if you want to grab the Khepri, so they could still do that. Mercury and the Chernobog are going to be the option. And now, unless, of course, that Ymir is being flexed somewhere else, the Khepri is not going to be on the table.
Yeah, what if that's the real big brain, is the Kings pick the Ymir with thinking the Jade Dragons thought, oh, this is just going back to Genetics again. He would never play something weird. They never throw this Ymir in a weird place. The next thing we know, we get a curveball from like Variety as he throws back to like Season 2, 3, and ends up getting Ymir solo. Most likely, though, that pick going over to Genetics. So Mercury Chernobog, we get one of the hard carry assassins in the game. We see even a lot of popularity of him in the SPL, in that Masters land, and even this week in the SCC, he's been a top pick, top ban for pretty much every single set that we've seen so far.
I want Genetics to be walling off these sonic booms, like just hiding around the corner, like you don't know the ult's coming, but Genetics, or you don't know Ymir's there, but Genetics knows you're there, and then the wall just comes up. Jingwei is going to be the hover here. We saw Panda Cat put this Jingwei in the dirt a little earlier on, and then Netroid's like, you know what, I don't really want to play that anymore. Is hovering it now. Maybe feels a little bit more confident on it now that the game has been going, trying to get to that late game portion where you can just, you're able to, get some farm under you and that sort of thing.
We do have Jingwei Ratatosker locked in for the Kings, so probably not going to be seeing that Ymir flex over towards Variety this time around. Jade Dragons will get to pick up their Khepri as the third pick comes back their way, so the two picks that have been taken away in both games 1 and 2, individually by the two different teams, now will be under one banner of the Jade Dragons. Kali going to be the first ban by the Dragons. No surprise, this is a pick that Captain Twig himself has liked to go over to as of recent.
Yeah, no doubt that Ho Yi ban was coming, not wanting to deal with the crit passive as well as just the 1v1 potential. Anything that can get pressure up against this Jingwei, probably something you want to ban away if you are the Camelot Kings. You have this Ymir for safety, but you also have a Khepri attached to that duo lane, and Anything that can make sure to dive this Jingwei before she gets her items online, something you want to try and stop. Cuckoo is going to be the ban from the Jade Dragon, so BMT is going to have to play something different that he hasn't played all set because the Cuckoo and the Uller are both off the table. And again, still trying to find that ADC, unless, of course, I have to highlight it every time because Chernobog is on the table, and there is a chance that Panda Cat's the one piloting it, but given the fact that Final K has played in every game thus far, it's probably still going to that solo lane.
Well, at least maybe a new look up in the mid lane. Nuwa, the lock-in for the Jade Dragons. We saw a little bit of this during Masters. I believe Zeros was one of the players who was piloting this one, and I want to say Moswall was one of the other players who was grabbing this pick out. So we'll have to see how this Nuwa can perform at the top level of play between our SPL caliber teams, this time over for the Jade Dragons. Camelot Kings with 2 more picks before it goes back to the Jade Dragons to see how they round this and maybe where we actually do see this Chernobog locked in. Erlong Shen, the hover, and ever since the slight rework to Erlong Shen, we haven't been seeing him nearly as much, Trelly.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to get locked in. At least I hope it doesn't. I just don't see Erlong finding too much value in this matchup. Especially, I mean, you got some decent CC up against the Khepri, but besides that, I don't really see any benefit. You're never going to outbox the Mercury as long as you get some crit online. That's pretty much the only option, right? You're trying to outpressure this Mercury early and hope he doesn't get online to that late game portion where you can never really trade, and it will be switched off. You know what? Pick the Erlong Shed. Never mind.
Oh, they did?
If these are my options, if it's ESET or Erlong, pick the Erlong, and it looks like the ESET is going to be going for BMT, so it will be in mid. There's no way Captain Twig's piloting that one once again. So if those are the options, I think that this is just early game aggression, right? Captain Twig is trying to shut down this Mercury early on, not let it get to late game. But now, I actually, was I right? Was Panda Cat really piloting this Chernobog the whole time?
It seems to be so. Bastet, the final pick for the Jade Dragons, and with a Mercury already locked in, seems that this one will be flexing its way back over into the solo lane, which is where Bastet had been mostly finding her home here in Season 9 at the very least. So we're looking at a Bastet versus Ratatosker style of solo lane, unless, and I'm just going to throw this possibility,
Go ahead.
that this Erlong Shen maybe could be going over to Variety just as a possibility too.
Yeah, there's a few different. I mean, there's just the Erlong and the Rat obviously have some flex potential. The ESET's got some flex potential. There's a lot of different picks here that could be going different ways. Given the fact that Pagon's on the map, I'm not even sure he's piloting that Nuwa. I mean, he probably he
why
should
would you
be.
curse that?
He
like this?
probably should be, but you know, who's to say he's not piloting that Bastet and. You know, Final K is going to whip out the weirdest Nuwa solo build we've ever seen. But I'm glad to see that they are trying, you know, a different style of comp here. They still have a fair bit of global. Sonic Boom essentially goes across the map. Obviously, Chernobog, we've seen how that's able to be used. And with the Nuwa, you can get vision on anyone just to make sure. And it also hits pretty much everyone on the map as long as there's no sort of immunities in that regard. So an interesting draft and a different style of composition that we have not seen in these past 2 games, right? This game 3, it looks like the Jade Dragons are really trying out something new. They got this Khepri, and that's going to help them out a ton.
Yeah, it seems that by being able to pick up this Khepri, the Jade Dragons have now been able to kind of re-envision their draft, where before they were going through these very aggressive style of picks, the Fafnirs and whatnot, to make sure that they can really facilitate these triple hunters and these high DPS style of comps, but now going for more of this protection style of composition, at least with the Khepri in that regard there, and now you throw the Bastet into the mix, and the fact that you even bring up the option that this Bastet could be going somewhere other than the solo lane right now. And it's honestly one of my favorite things about Season 9 right now, Trelly, is the fact that we're now in the second phase, and we're still looking at team compositions and going, where in the world are some of these going? Because at this point, sometimes I think the players don't even know until they get to like the last 5 seconds of trades.
Right, and I think that's I think the Jade Dragons were banking on that. They were holding on to this ambiguity in their draft. They weren't quite sure where everything was going. You see this Chernobog locked in, you see the Mercury, and then you see the Khepri, and you're like, okay, that's Sam for Soccer, that's fine, okay, and that's PBM. Now we have to worry about these 2 picks, and then the Bastet gets locked in, and you're like, so it looks like Cherno was actually going the way of Panda Cat the whole time. We wasted that Ho Yi ban, but the Jade Dragons could have been holding on to that as well, saying, okay, if we get Ho Yi, maybe we'll throw that into the duo lane because it's got a good matchup, but if not, we can do whatever we want.
A wild and crazy matchup for game number 3 between the Camelot Kings and the Jade Dragons. We'll take it down to the casters one final time.
How lucky are we? Normally we have to wait what feels like, Gore, a few weeks in each phase to finally start getting some 3-game sets rolling. We're going to get one in our first set of the phase. Kings versus Dragons. We'll go all 3. And Gore, game 3 maybe gives us our most unique compositional matchup yet. We've got Big Man Tings on ESET at a mid, Pagon on Nuwa. out of mid. Safer Soccer gets his Mercury back. I think a lot of different places to look here. And
there's some really, like, again, probably narrow, not going to happen a lot combos, but like a 3 Clay Soldier stun into like 2 Mercury punches kills pretty much everybody on the Kings. And like, those are going to be very rare that they can line up that perfectly, but like, that's a lot of damage that can exist. I'm a big fan. I liked what we saw out of this new Wa when we were watching her through Masters, right? Like, it started to show up. I think the Kings actually were maybe the first team that did that. Yeah, no, they brought it out. I want to say with them, if I remember correctly, it was the Kali and the Nuwa 2 games in a row that they just ran the floor. Like, nobody could touch them. They did, not necessarily great early game, first 15 minutes, very standard, not crazy, not really far behind, not really ahead. And then their team fight just leveled up, and I think that that's a lot of what this pick can bring. Good stuns, you've got decent damage. Of course, the ult, as much as it gets memed, is free damage that you get and free reveals,
right.
So you can get a little bit of vision out there. I think she, as a pick, is just fun to watch.
That's just the way of the road for
and
these
fun
styles of picks. To get level 5 on Sanford Soccer is when the eyes widen just a little bit. And that's when, like, dual lane for the Kings is really going to have to be concerned. I mean, Netroid and Genetics, both opportunities to outplay Merc ganks. As a Jing Wei, you can get up and dash away, relatively safe, airstrike, effective at that. I guess there's a world where Genetics makes Sam like face plant into a wall.
You can wall a sonic boom.
If he's able to react quick enough. So there's options. But Sanford Soccer loves to get active on this pick. Then you have to say, all right, well, if we're not looking towards duo, maybe mid could be a viable option. But then there's also some safety for variety. It might not be as straightforward as I'm thinking for Sanford Soccer. You've got a lot to look at on your ganks.
I think that this is a pick in the Mercury. Not much has changed about the essence of Mercury. What are you trying to do? Become a late game hyper carry. Can you get kills early on? Absolutely. But do you flourish in the late game where you can find some one-on-ones? Yeah. So I think that Sam, like you said, maybe not finding the easiest matchups and honestly having maybe some struggles later on in the game anyway. But I think if we can follow, especially with the build path things that have been going on, you get the Golden Blade, you can start stacking up some of the crit. It's not too uncommon to see like even Rage get picked up by Mercuries and go into some of those items that we're not even used to seeing when crit builds come through. It won't be surprising if that's the route that he wants to go because it just hits really hard. Mercury's really good at it. And I think with the team around them, you've got so much dive and potentially peel as well, that it really creates scenarios where someone's going to suffer. I mean, one Kepri pluck like that, if a Mercury's there and you're level 20, you get 3 free punches in.
Yeah, agreed. It's such a Sam pick. And Mercury is so strong in general right now. So part of me was surprised that the Kings let it through, but when the Kings are riding high the way they were after Game 2, maybe open yourself up to a little bit of risk. And now you move to Game 3, Gore, and these are usually the games, especially with the way the meta has gone so far. We're a 25-minute average is now maybe closer to like 30 minutes is what we're expecting. Usually Game 3, the pace slows down just a bit because you don't want to make the fatal mistake that then ends the set. Could that be what Panda Cat and Mike are about to do, though? A bit extended out in this lane. Blink forward, pin, abduct. All of it's there on the Polar Bear Mike, and the body blocks in are enough to grab the Camelot King's first blood. Erlong Shen, you want to get active early into the match. And Twig uses Blink and snags first blood yet again.
And even with less CC technically, right? Like before, it's like if you got the knock-up, you were pretty much golden. The pin would be set up. You don't have the taunt yet because you're not level 5. So that was just good old-fashioned damage, good freeze and wall from Genetics, and then just presence from Netroid. I think, again, the Kings are playing this early game incredibly well. And they're getting the right amount of focus. They've got exactly the gold from the first blood up. But being able to find that presence for Twig is what got them so far ahead last time around. I think with Erlong, like you said, you want to get involved early, and it translates really well to keeping yourself involved throughout the game. I think Twig is going to be able to play a similar style to what we just saw.
Fine, okay, is going to walk back towards blue, maybe? I don't know if Twig... I mean, he's on a ward. Okay, that is fine, okay's ward.
Yeah.
That Twig was just on Division Shard, I think. Just timed out for Fine OK. So, wasn't going to be a surprise for Fine OK. It was able to path around Captain Twig somewhat effectively. Sanford Soccer hits level 5. Mercury has hit that point, Gore. Golden Blade completed for both of these junglers and stacking items for both of the mid laners. So a little bit of scaling to be done over in mid, but it's these next few minutes where Sanford Soccer maybe should start to find his impact.
This is where you can start hitting sonic booms. You're not on your own the most amount of damage yet, but with a sonic boom into a special delivery, then all of a sudden you just got you're CC'd. You're stuck. You can't do too much. And I think the follow-up, you can throw someone, stun someone into Mike's pull. Again, the chain that can create itself from the Dragons is very, very enticing. And that's where you get into, like Duwa territory, right? With like Clay Soldiers, at this point, usually not crazy leveled up. Like, if anything, Pagon probably has a second level in Clay Soldiers, right? You get the second soldier, and up until level 5, that's kind of what you're sitting with and relaxing with. So it's one that typically seen set on, but still decent burst that you can have in an early game. I think that if they decide to combine, and a lot of that is going to be if Sam decides to do anything in mid lane, then there's a lot of potential over there. Even if they don't decide to do something in mid lane, you still have that ult.
Uh-oh, Netrioid uses dash at number 1, Panda Cat over towards left, and an airstrike. Wow, just enough to get Netrioid out, and that's exactly what we wondered would happen. Netrioid just uses the ultimate, uses the dash, gets away. Again, luckily, pretty low investment for the Jade Dragons. Panda just uses the ultimate. Sam doesn't use the Sonic Boom. So both Hunter ults down. Netrioid a little bit less safe than he was a moment ago. Captain Twig, though, wants to return the favor. Mike could fall a second time for another kill to the Camelot Kings, but a Scarab's Blessing is on the map this time. The movement speed helping Sonic Boom to secure the escape. Polar Bear Mike's got to use the ult, but is able to get out alive.
It was the question I had of whether or not that could then become a Gold Fury. You got Circle of Protection, so it's on the fence. But again, playing it safe, you don't necessarily want to risk one, especially early on. That's something I learned that really fast as a support player, by the way. Before, like 9-4, even with like just the Spirit Robe, or if you were still stacking Thieves, maybe if you were still stacking Thieves, it's not as easy. But like if you walked into like a 6-7 minute Gold Fury, you're just going to stand there, you're going to tank it, you're going to like keep your eyes open, make sure no one comes to steal it. But eventually it's just going to die, because if you've got your mid laner and your carry next to you, the damage is there. You might have to trade it off at some point. That's really it. It hits real hard. They added that magical damage, and it's miserable sometimes. You walk up and you're like, my brain is still in like season 2 sometimes, where I'm like, all right, cool, let's just rush this Gold Fury 5 minutes in, and then it just decimates me.
Yeah, it's swing.
And so I have to remind myself even now that it's not as easy as, hey, we got a kill, we are a pushback, a TKO, we can get a Gold Fury.
We still get caught off. We get caught off guard with like some, even in this set, the Titan sieges, we're like, why are they not going for it? I'm still not used to how tanky and how much damage that Titan can do after recent updates. Team's a little bit more cautious. Again, game, I don't know, don't want to generalize, but extends maybe to one more Fire Giant here and there. Instead of the 25 minutes, we're getting 30 minutes, things like that. One thing we haven't covered, though, Gore. Do you have any fantasy players in this game? Because we redrafted our fantasy teams.
I think I have, I want to say I have Tings and Genetics.
I have
to double check.
I have Panda Cat, and I have a bunch of Bolts and Warriors on
my
team.
I've got Mike for sure. I know I've got Tings and Mike, and I think I have a secondary Kings player. I have 2 purples.
If viewers weren't tired enough of hearing us talk about our fantasy teams, we redrafted Gormizer. I think is it just at Gormizer on Twitter?
Yeah.
Has posted everything you need to know about those. Sanford Soccer sends a gank towards Netrioid, but again, it's an airstrike out. But also beads used this time. A little extra benefit from Sanford Soccer. The Mercury maintains his activity level, but still hasn't struck for a kill just yet. But getting those beads off of Netrioid should be helpful. Netrioid has gone Icavale start here, Gore, and then into some lifesteal after that. So a bit of a callback to how Hunter builds were a few updates ago.
Yeah, you don't have any Kings players, as it turns out. I had to double check for you, but you don't. You didn't. I got
Panda Cat.
I got Twig and Tings.
And Mike. Game 1.
And Cheerio. This is a big matchup for me, actually, as it turns out. This is a really, really important set for my fantasy.
Well, look, it doesn't feel like anyone is fed yet, and it's gone 3 games, so you're starting to spool up some points here. So the Dragons looking okay for you. Camelot Kings, whoever has Twig in our league is thrilled after game number 1. Somebody surely has Captain Twig.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, you just said that, and I ignored it.
Went right in one ear, right out the other. I understand it.
Yeah, it happens every
sometimes.
once in a while. I told you I was feeling angsty today. It's the way she goes. You're happy with how Twig played in game 2 then, and happy with the way that game number 3 has started. Polar Bear Mike uses the Scarab's Blessing, but will be detonated down by Genetics. Another kill over to the Camelot Kings, this time spread 3 ways, as Genetics grabs the kill, but assists go to BMT and Captain Twig on the other side.
And I like, again, the pressure that they're getting. Admittedly, it's 2 kills onto Mike. Is it the worst case scenario for a Kepri? Not really. But
for your
I think it's
team?
the, well,
Yes.
yeah, me crying as I watch the kill count slowly. Well, just keep giving them the Twig and it balances out, right? That's how the points work? I don't know. Either way, it's the openings that it can then provide, right? Right now, Mike's not dead long enough to change too much on the map. Scarab's Blessing isn't going to do enough this early on that you're feeling like super game changery about it, or in this case, having to use it on yourself, like you're going to get out of there too
Individual
often.
picks, right?
But like soon enough, that pick is going to translate into nothing more than just, okay, now it's a 4-on-5. That's what matters most. Then you can get a Gold Fury. Then you can get a Pyromancer. So I think the Kings are still good at focusing and finding the target. If they get Pagon, that's even bigger.
Pagon silenced and wing gusted and taunted in by Captain Twig as the 9 turns Blessing delivers another kill to the Camelot King's doorstep. Panicat, though, with the rotation over from his ultimate, turns one back against the Kings. Netroid is just wailing away on PBM, so not clean by either team. Both mid laners go down.
And again, it comes down to the conversation of who's worth a little bit more. Ting's technically worth more as a kill, especially with the lead that the Kings have and being able to get that little bit of a level as well, versus killing off Mike twice. Does it equalize things incredibly for the Dragons? No, but I think that showcases that maybe the Kings aren't as well off as they could be. Being able to kill off Mike twice in a row is not as big a deal if things won't go too easily for you. And I think Pandacat showcasing the rotation power that has. Bastet can move pretty quickly as well, so I expect to see Fino-K in these matchups pretty often. It's going to be the 5-on-5 that's maybe most confusing. Poor Mike.
I know.
Poor
it's going to
Mike.
happen again. Scarab's Blessing out, and detonation on the other side, and a kill over to Genetics. So we've run that story back now 3 times. This happens every once in a while, though, Gore. Like a Kepri game that just goes wrong. Nothing you can do is working out. Mike upgrades his Ankh, to be fair, but also only has the Spirit Robe. As far as itemization, beads used by Pandacat needed. Fino-K rotates out of solo lane as Captain Twig drops the pin. And Hunter's Abast pulls Netroid back, but it's captured out by the 9 turns Blessing. Pandacat has done big damage here. And nearly enough damage from Pagon to grab a kill onto Twig. This is brutal for the Jade Dragon. So many kills, narrowly escaping. And everything has worked out for the Kings so far. Big Man Ting sent back. But again, a kill will escape, and again, a kill turned around. The Jade Dragons find an opening, but that door is shut in their face.
Yeah, I was gonna go on to the Kepri point you made, but at this point, I feel like the Dragons almost feel like they're not working together right now, if that makes sense. Like, I watch what happens over there and left, and it feels like Fino-K is making one play, Pandacat's making a different play. They just happen to be in the same place, right? Not a lot of damage that gets comboed. I think Pandacat was still making it back, so like maybe it was a timing issue on that regard. But then Sam ults in, surrounded by 3 Kings players, does get good damage onto Tings, but no one was there to follow up, and then you've got the extras that are walking forward. And it just feels like they weren't quite all on the same page when they wanted to engage and how they wanted to engage for each individual skirmish. And that's just gonna, like, the Kings will eat that up. They love that. If you're just gonna walk into them, yeah, absolutely. Let your jungler come in and give us a free kill. You know, he's got this rage, but he only has the 1 stack. It's not like he's, doing a lot of damage just yet. And I think that's where this team for the Dragons can find its strength. Not only in converging and starting to play together and feeling a little more confident there, but Kepri, you had mentioned it, 0-3-1. I might be misattributing this, but I feel like I've seen a Genetics game where like 0-8 or something on a Kepri, just bullied for the first like 15 to 20 minutes, and then late game hit some of the best reses anyway, and that's all that mattered, is like you got farmed really hard early on to the point where you were worth virtually nothing in terms of gold, but you were still able to find those ults and bring people back, and that is where I see Mike. Mike can die 6 more times for all I care. As long as late game he is saving a priority player and giving them that second chance, I think that's going to make the difference for the Kepri. when it comes down to Sam and moments like that, you've got the rage. You've already got the next dagger. You're going into more crit. You're going to start hitting really hard, and that's going to change, I think, a lot of how these fights can go.
So those are your avenues back into the game if you're the Dragons. Can't get this stolen, no. The Gold Fury, actually, maybe the more important of the two objective, goes to the Jade Dragons, and you might have noticed a Frenzy there, and no, it's not on Mike. Pagon has gone Frenzy with one of his two relics. Beads the other one. I suppose with the ultimate, you're kind of immuning yourself for a short period of time anyway. I mean, you crash back down, and then you're
and you don't go
in
very
some trouble.
far.
You don't go very far, but you are delaying life
You're
for
off
a
the
moment
field.
in the way that an Aegis might as well. A fight over on left, though, forces the ultimate out of Netrioid, but Variety is rotated left as well. Double knock up on the back line for the Ratatoskr. A killing spree reached for Captain Twig in back-to-back games. And PBM will fall for his 4th death. The brutality continues if your character is Khepri.
I will say this. When I said he could die 6 more times, I wouldn't care. I don't want that to actually happen. That feels bad for the mental.
Kings fans do, and Captain Twig does. But
I don't know. You know what? I don't even think, if I'm a Kings fan, I don't even think I want 6 more kills on the Khepri. Like 6 more kills, yes, but just on the Khepri seems like it might be excessively targeted.
I mean, Mike,
is there like targeting in Smite? Can we like call the admins in if someone's like 0-11?
I think as long as it stays on the battleground and doesn't then like roll onto Twitter or something after the fact in like a egregious way, I think you can target somebody however you like.
I wanted to roll onto Twitter. That's fun.
Look at where it is more entertaining for us. He's had to go Emperor's Armor. Like the way that this game has gone, Mike at this point is saying, I'm going to drop Ankh, I'm going to hopefully be alive to put a Scarab's Blessing out, and if we're fighting by a tower or we're being tower dove, here you go. Take a bit of a buff, team, because the game has just gone in that direction. And I noted the Frenzy for Pagon instead of the Aegis. Also, the Bumba's Dagger for Big Man Tings is something I brought up. Being able to continue to secure objectives and spool that forward for your team could be very strong.
I've got a theory.
Okay.
And it is looking at, so I see the Emperor's Armor. First off, pretty decent stats. Outside of the fact that it helps your towers. On its own, pretty decent stats. You get good health, 300 health, and 60 prots. Plus, again, the Tower Aura. Or the Torah, I guess is what I was about to say, but that's a completely different thing, so maybe that doesn't work out the way that I want it to. But you get that, you get the Frenzy on Pagon, which seems weird, and again, agreed, it is not necessarily something that I ideally am going on a new AW. But then you start to look at what can this team comp do late game. Throw down some Clay Soldiers, pop the Frenzy, let Mike walk in. That tower's dead. And if you can do that for a Phoenix, that Phoenix is dead. So it feels like a late game siege, especially with now a Deathbringer online for Sam. He's going to be able to zone and get some kills. FidoK can dive. That opens up the other 3, the Pagon, PBM, and Panda Cat, the P3 combo on the Dragons, to really just rock the worlds of whatever objective stands in their way.
You're hoping that the Camelot Kings have a slip
Also,
up
I'm coining that. The P3 combo is sick.
We'll stick with that. I do like that, Gore. You are hoping, though, that the Camelot Kings stumble somewhere along the way.
Yes.
Because, yes, it's great to think about that siege, but
you got to get there.
you got a 4K gold lead Camelot Kings in front of you, and again with the dagger for BMT, I think it's 35% extra damage from your abilities onto jungle monsters, so you'll be able to secure that a little bit more effective. Yeah, 35% damage versus jungle monsters. So talk about the secure anyway from a circle of protection. There's like very limited steal potential now from the Jade Dragons around any of that, and you get a little extra healing, things like that, once you're able to grab one of those kills. FidoK has to use the beads here. Up and over he goes. Variety in on the chase. Blink out as well. Pin thrown from Twig will be avoided. Auto attacks around the FG, but they haven't connected with the actual beast itself, and now they do as some damage finds its way onto the Fire Giant. Watch out for Circle of Protection. Double Sonic Boom from Sam, but not much comes of it. And an ultimate down from Pagon as well. Chunks some damage out of the Camelot Kings. Early poke damage making a difference now in this fight. Genetics has been left alone. Jade Dragon's healthier at the moment. And first kill will go to the Dragons. Now there's some chase down. Sam for Soccer around the left-hand side. Special delivery, no good, as Variety had to use the beads. Good route out of the Jade Dragons, and Mike specifically. And it's the Dragon score back on the FG.
And look, they've got a lot of crit on Sam. They can burn this down. They don't have the same secure, though.
Wow, there's been too much hope, too much initiation. Circle protection was used by big man Tings, provide some damage and some healing for the Camelot Kings. Numbers, yes, for the Jade Dragons, but you cannot forget the gold lead that the Camelot Kings still have. I think that the ultimate from Pagon, Gore, and then some poke damage really chunked out the Kings and gave the Jade Dragons that opening.
Yeah, and what was wild, it looked like nothing, and honestly, replaying it probably still it feels like nothing at the moment. But that double sonic boom hitting 2 people, you get a little bit of damage. Repositioning Sam into a spot where your tanks have to split up. How are we going to bodyguard our carries from this crit Mercury and from the rest of the Dragons? So being able to kind of pull the Kings in a weird way, stretch them out a little bit, give the Dragons that opportunity to push forward. They get the kill on the genetics very cleanly, good body blocks, things like that. And it's almost the opening they need, right? Like, there's just too much. You had mentioned it, but like that gold lead is just enough on the side of the Kings that they had barely enough health, but enough health that they could still show face around the FG. And the FG does just enough damage that it was too much for the Dragons to handle and take a fight and get the FG. It was almost too much on their plate. And so having to back off, the Kings keep themselves alive. The Dragons stop themselves from essentially what feels like maybe having the dagger shoved into their abdomen there in terms of a fire giant. So like they keep themselves going. And I'm honestly just going to keep watching. I think Sam's build right now is like the key. Wow. Mike's also hasn't moved a little bit, which is a little worrisome because it's just the Emperor's armor.
He upgraded his
relics.
I think he got the Phantom Shell. So, you're right though. As far as hard hitting prots and health, Mike is not much tankier than he was a few minutes ago. At least gets Phantom Shell for his team, so that'll help out with some of the genetics walls. The gap in the mid lane has continued, which is interesting considering not much has really happened around mid. As an ult through from Sanford Soccer. Yeah, that last, I'm with you, Gore. I wasn't sure what was happening there. Taunt in from Captain Twig. Goodbye, Sanford Soccer. Mercury hurts, but he is also squishy. And the perfect setup from the Camelot Kings grabs a kill onto the Dragon's jungler.
There has been one stack on that Rage for 10 minutes? I mean, when did he finish it? It feels like eons ago that it was picked up, and likely also eons ago that kill happened that ended up giving that stack over there. I don't know if it makes a big difference. I think, maybe you come through, maybe you get the kill onto Twig. Twig, was relatively low, but a couple more crits in those hits from Sam, and suddenly maybe you're talking about a different circumstance, at least a 1-for-1. So that's something that is a big contingent point, that not happening. Unfortunately, going really deep and not having it pay off. What was a really good fight from the Dragons last time just literally can't happen here.
Wow, the Dragons completely give this one over. And there will be no fight. Oni Fury's going to get pulled by the Dragons as well, but can the Dragons even do that quick enough? Variety is close by. Could be steal potential for the Ratatoskr. Variety closes the gap. Doesn't steal away the Oni. And a consolation prize to the Jade Dragons as all 5 members of the Kings get the first FG of the game. Gold lead expands out a little bit further. The Kings now can turn their eyes, Gore, towards the last 3 towers on the map and some extra gold in their pockets.
And really, this is a good spot for them. I mean, look at their map state. Their tier 2s hurt, and then other than that, the Kings have taken no map damage as far as they're concerned. And so, tier 1's 23.5 minutes in don't mean a lot, but that's 1,500 gold across the lanes that the Dragons just don't have versus what the Kings have been able to pick up. It's extra health for the Titans, so you can't just run down left lane and all of a sudden try to get the kill. So even if the Dragons turn around a fight around a tier 2 or around a Phoenix here, you're looking at the long comp. They're trying to play for 40 minutes at that point. They need it to go a little longer. Maybe they could do it in like 35 or something. But at this point, if you're the Kings, you're kind of playing with house money. You're feeling a lot more confident about what you have going on. You know you can knock these tier 2 towers down, get a lot more gold into your own coffers, and really start to get more aggressive. The reset right before the Phoenix Siege, 4 with enhanced buff, 5 with ults, 5 with Fire Giant, and now you've got 2 exposed Phoenixes to start to apply pressure to, 2.5 minutes to work with, and you're just getting stronger. Spectral was finished there for Twig, so all of a sudden this Mercury, if it even does get to the backline, isn't going to be able to take out the jungler as easily, and the same thing can now be said for Genetics, who just finished that same item. Ting's got the extra pin. You've got a Deathbringer for Netrioid. The Kings are just in a stronger position. A lot of it has to do with the gold and the farm that they've been playing, and a lot of that I can attribute to Twig's early game. I think it was phenomenal in terms of where they targeted it. I had said, like, if Mike can get some 6 saves later on in this game, then it's worth the early game deaths, but that hasn't happened yet, so it's not worthwhile. It's done nothing but pay off for the Kings.
Now, Twig has had 2 different styles of games in back-to-back games. He had full-on carry-style jungle, and while he doesn't love the storyline that he is a facilitator jungler, he absolutely does play that way sometimes, and he does it very well. I mean, he has 3 kills, most on his team, but he's also facilitated the way that this game has gone much more effectively on the Erlong Shen. So I've loved what I've seen from Twig today. Camelot Kings, a bit of a stumble in game 1, but have really taken this game back underneath their own control and dictated the pacing and the way things have gone. So now you've knocked down all the tier 2 towers. You've gone back. You spent up a little bit of that gold, 1.3K or so for a couple members of the Dragons. The minute left score might see one shot at one of these Phoenixes, but also a chance to reset. Because there's not much left on the map, right? You're going to have a Pyromancer here soon. The game state won't be much different between the next FG and now. I don't hate giving it a go.
I'm surprised that it took this long, though. 2.5 minutes, they were leaving the base. I thought we were going to get the Phoenix line a little quicker, but there's Twig immediately going in for Mike.
My goodness, but has Twig overstepped? No, he's not. As Polar Bear Mike out of the Scarab's Blessing will dash away. So 9 turns Blessing is down, but into the Cosmos is not. Up goes Variety, down he crashes onto a couple members of the Jade Dragons. Will dash away, Genetics pulled through by FineOK, but not enough damage as the wall has been successful. Pagon crashes back down after sending his ult out. I don't see any low health bars on the Camelot Kings. Looks like a couple shells completely mitigated the damage from Pagon. Sonic Boom out from Sam for Soccer, but doesn't get the kill, left alone. And Sam will survive as well. No deaths, including the Phoenix. And we'll go into this next FG in 50 seconds.
I really like the way they play that, though, and it's specifically just keeping Mike alive. It's really weird to think about, but Genetics dies if Mike is still under that Phoenix because it's attacking a little faster and hitting a little harder thanks to the Emperor's armor. When he comes back, Netroid, that half health, a little bit of it was the Dragons. A lot of it was the Phoenix. And so I think having Mike around really helped keep that going. So good ult from Mike to keep himself alive, keep things rolling. And they keep a lot of really good relics. I mean, you still got 2 shells online, all of the beads that are available online, 2 of the blinks and a Cursed Ankh immediately available. Whereas Genetics is a little worse for wear in the relics. Granted, that Bracer is going to be coming up pretty soon. Maybe it's going to be impactful for the FG, maybe not. I think the Dragons, though, 28 minutes in, Fire Giants on the ground. You don't have a Phoenix missing. I think you have to go fight for this FG, and right now, they're going to show up a little late to it. With Circle of Protection there, they might not be able to make the fight they need to.
Yeah, if I'm the again, this is where Bumba's Hammer is going to be so effective for big man Tings. You're not out securing a Circle Protection anyway. Now you've got Bumba's Hammer there. And Dagger before that. This is going to be simple for the Camelot Kings. Again, this is just shy of a confirmation of the game, it feels like, for the Camelot Kings with this FG. Now you've got 3 exposed Phoenixes. Left side is down to half HP. You're looking for a miraculous initiation here, Gore, if you're the Jade Dragons, or FineOK, I guess, being able to pull somebody really important with that Hunters of Bath. You don't necessarily want Genetics to be the one that gets pulled in like he was last time. You need a perfect initiation if you're the Dragons to have any hope.
It's that weird balance of, like, you don't want it to be Genetics, but, like, also you'll take what you can get because, like, you need
2 kills in
something
a 20-minute game,
to be able to come your way. And I think a lot of that is going to be here. There's a world, even if the Dragons wipe the Kings, it is still going to be a long haul for them. But this is a good spot to try and find a defense. Look how funneled together they are. And so you can get a really good engage. You can get a good initiation, but you have to be able to find the follow-up damage. And that's what they've been lacking. It's the follow-up damage. Every time the Dragons get a pull or a stun or a lockdown, there's no one there to actually hit anything. And right now, with the Trebuchet finally going down, you can prolong this Phoenix. But otherwise, I think the Kings still have the better engage, and they didn't even have to use Circle of Protection during that Fire Giant.
Yeah, there's not much you can do against Variety, who can simply drop down where he wants to. Polar Bear Mike stunned, Pagon jumped on. Phoenix not taken down just yet. Netroid actually walks a bit too far forward. Sonic Boom back from Sam for Soccer. Presses the gas pedal down just a bit for the Jade Dragons. Again, not big damage out from Pagon, and more chunk damage through from the Dragons. The Camelot Kings, the one backpedaling here. Airstrike up and over, gets Netrioid out to safety. Root down, but big man Tings avoids it thanks to the beads. The Jade Dragons desperately searching for a kill, and they have found one and kept their base alive.
And now they can surge forward. Look, this is big for them. Whether they get any kills doesn't matter as much, but look where Sam is. I mean, Netroid's low.
What can Sam grab on the backside here? Variety has to dash away. Captain Twig low as well. The Jade Dragons, they smell blood in the water. This is their best chance at getting some more kills on the board, but you can't do too much as Scarab's Blessing now gets used. Sam for Soccer will be taken low. And a mid lane tier 1 tower crumbles.
This is what I was talking about, though. This, in my mind, is why this is important for the Dragons. I don't care if you're picking up the kills. Kills are perfect. A kill there means you get that Phoenix. A kill there means you can push a little further forward. But those towers have been looming too long. So being able to burn through, get some gold back in your pockets, get something online for Mike, a couple more items. It's not a good gold lead for the Dragons in any way, form, or fashion. But you can see the curve finally going back in its way. They save their own Phoenix. They take down and expose a Phoenix there in mid. Take down a tier 2 and expose a Phoenix there in mid. And so now you have the options. There's 2 tier 2s, 3,000 gold still available on the map in terms of being able to knock left side and right side tier 2s off the board. But you also get some of those items a little closer to finishing. You know, if you're Mike, you just upgraded your starter. You feel a lot better about that. Soul Gem completed there for Pagon.
That's
so
good.
Getting those 6th items, having the starters already up there, when you look at the other side, you're in a very similar spot power curve-wise as where the Kings are. And since Mike just hit 17, that's quote-unquote the last important one. Granted, the next 3 levels still helpful, especially in getting the Scarab's Blessing up so you can have a higher res rate. But it's still, it just feels better now. I think the Dragons in that one fight have opened up more of a conversation. Last time around, it's, okay, you've got to be here around this Fire Giant. I don't know how well it works out otherwise. I still think you're in a very similar spot. 17 seconds left on this buff, so the Kings can't really do anything with it. You need to be around, and I think the Dragons have now solidly put on the board that they can actually fight up against the Kings.
I wonder, though, if the Dragons are considering that fight only went that well because of the positioning, right?
Yeah,
you're kind of
Phoenix.
funneling some of that initiation underneath the Phoenix. But this is an enhanced Fire Giant.
They got a Primal as well earlier.
Right, got a Primal Fury. Pyromancer will go down. There's plenty of time. You got 45 seconds before the Dragons even need to consider stepping out to this. Because it really felt like a bunch of individual moments of initiation from the Kings that didn't quite connect in the way that they were hoping. And actually, Fine OK with the fantastic ultimate grab onto Netrioid made that fight under the Phoenix super awkward. Suddenly your Jingwei now doesn't have beads, has to back away, is taking some chunk damage. So everything went well for the Jade Dragons. Are you assuming you can replicate that around the enhanced Fire Giant? Ends up being the question. Initial positioning-wise, Gore says yes, but with 15 seconds left, the Jade Dragons and the Kings will do a lot of bouncing around. That health bar for genetics is just beefy.
Yeah.
And you're hoping that some of the penetration can whittle that down. You'd love some chin size, but Panda Cat has kind of moved away from that style of build here. And interesting, though, kind of awkward rotation around. The Dragons could get collapsed on here.
I actually like what the Kings do there. You got to keep your eyes on Sam. Sam's going to be looking for an angle to get a very deep dive and use that Sonic Boom to displace some of the Kings if they go onto the Fire Giant. So they're going to be looking for angles to stop that, which means they can't quite pull it as long as Sam is alive back there. He just dewarded as well. And this might give the Dragons their opportunity at least to take back the pit. But again, the engage in my mind, if Sam's not the one starting things off, I think it goes over towards the Kings.
Oh, Soul Gem procs.
Oh my
Polar Bear
God.
Mike will not even get the Scarab's Blessing off. He's deleted by the Camelot Kings. Is that how this game ends? Mike being whittled down, not even able to use the ultimate. And instead, the Camelot Kings will double back, grab the enhanced Fire Giant, and the Jade Dragons will have to defend Sans support for the next 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's one of those play. I mean, I'd said if you're the Dragons, you want maybe the 35, 40-minute mark, but not like this. This is not where you wanted to be.
Well, that wasn't really a good look at their team comp, right?
No, yeah, they just are in an awkward spot. You've got good damage, but again, the engage is just better. Now with an EFG, this is easy for the Kings to walk forward.
This is really where you need, Mike, that second chance in these fights, though Variety taken low. Remember, Titan a little bit stronger. Gonna be a little bit weaker now that all the towers are gone, and The Phoenixes are going to get taken care of as well. So you're going to get Mike back for one more chance here in this game, but has the damage been done? Ends up being the question. Whoa, Sam for soccer alone down the left side of the map. Saves special delivery to get out. Circle protection used by big man Tings as well. Yeah, sure. Take a swing. This one just is a miss.
And so, yeah, it's one of those things. If that goes right, that's a double kill potentially, maybe at least a single kill for Sam. And at this point, you got to swing for the fences. Like you have to make sure that every play is going to be a home run for you. But like you said, unfortunately, it's a miss.
Wow, the Dragons are really pushing for this.
I mean, where do you want to fight? Under the Titan right now? No, I think this is actually smarter for them because while you don't have the Titan dealing damage, it's also not going to die in the event that things don't quite go your way.
And the Kings haven't been able to go back and reset yet. So as far as gold goes, it's still theoretical for the Camelot Kings. But Mike again gets caught out, throws up the Scarab's Blessing, will not get proc this time. Sam for soccer alone, and that's how he'll die. As Netroid strikes the fatal shot, a double kill for the Jingwei. Mike makes 3, and the Camelot Kings bait out the Jade Dragons. They will close this set in 35 minutes in Game 3.
Yo, but FightOK got another one, and that's the silver lining, right? You're going to lose the game, but at least you killed BMT.
Yep, 1-0-2 for FightOK. A lot more attractive than 0-0-2. The Jade Dragon score, I don't know, I was going to say felt outclassed here in Game 3. I don't know if that's the right wording for it. This is just a game that the Camelot Kings, and specifically Captain Twig early on,
2 games in a row.
We're able to dictate everything, right? From minute 1, it felt like there was pressure from this Erlong Shen. Captain Twig dictates all the plays, and the Camelot Kings look better for it.
It's a lot of his early aggression combined with the way Tings was playing. I think that Tings in Game 1 had a ton of damage, but then in Game 2, Game 2 had a lot of damage. Game 3 was able to then just sustain, play the E-set, lots of good stuns and set up for the team. Circle of Protection ended up being a pretty big deal for them. And then as that rolls forward, Netroid's just banging out crits like it's nothing. You got Genetics finding brilliant walls, really good freezes, things like that. And Variety's setup, like just having that initiation of Ratatosker being able to jump into the backline, the Dragons didn't have a way to handle it.
Our first set of Phase 2 goes the distance. 2-1 to the Camelot Kings over the Jade Dragons. I'm tired of looking at Gore and I. We'll go back to the desk to break it down.
Well, man, that was kind of harsh on himself.
I wasn't tired of looking at them.
I was fine. I was fine keeping the camera on them the whole time. I had no problem with that whatsoever.
I want everyone to know I'm never tired of looking at Dave and Gore, just so we're clear.
Absolutely not. Camelot Kings, though, find a powerful 2-1 win over the Jade Dragons in Day 1, Week 1 of Phase 2 of the SPL. And what a way to start things off, kind of a rematch of that Masters semifinals. Last time we went to the Kings. And once again, it goes over to them. A lot of it with the facilitation that Captain Twig was able to bring inside of that jungle. That Erlong Shen got off to a very early start. Ended up going 3-0 early on into the game. Really making sure that PBM specifically was not allowed to have any kind of fun that game.
Yeah, they had a ton of CC. Obviously, I think Gore highlighted it pretty well. Genetics on the Shamir has had Mike's number, even Big Man Tings on this E-set. So much CC, making sure this Khepri could not live. And if you can't survive, you can't revive your teammates, and that already puts a pretty big hole in your draft, obviously. Twig got off to a great start on this Erlong Shen as well. I was worried about the late game, carry potential of a character like Erlong, but if you get off to such a great early, you're not too worried about the late game.
Yeah. It all started with an early first blood about 3.5 minutes in the dual lane, and from that point on, Captain Twig able to make his mark across the map, getting picks onto Pagon, onto PBM, just making sure that his team was able to get those early kills that they needed in order to make sure that this early game was working out for them. And then as we all know, once the late game does come around, that's where the Kings typically really start picking up, really hit the gas pedal there. But Captain Twig on this Erlong, I think you were right to maybe stress some of the concerns about this god with some of his CC removed, some of his stuff changed in his kit. Not a whole lot of players have been picking this pick, but Captain Twig makes it work out here in Game 3.
Yeah, I think it was just because of the draft and how much CC the team had as a whole. Again, Gore highlighted the knockups from Variety, getting to that backline on this Ratatosker was largely ignored, right? You see this rat and you're like, that's not our main target, we can't really DPS that, but if you are just ignoring that rattle, the knockups are going to be so annoying. Sam for Soccer tries to go to the backline, and they just have so much lockdown and CC they can turn on him so quickly. Props to Genetics as well, man. The peel from this pick, not only the setup, obviously the walls were good, the freezes were good, but the peel for his squad was the reason that 3 of his teammates were able to go undying this game.
Yeah, 2-0, 4-0, and 4-0 again from its Variety, Captain Twig, and Netro, respectively. 2, 1, and 10 for Genetics on the Ymir, making sure that he can put out as much defense as possible between him and Variety. 53 and 52,000 damage mitigated as well, making sure that for sure these two players could stand at that front line, get into those backline defenses and offenses, especially around these Phoenix dives. That's where we really got to see kind of the highlight of Variety more than anything during these games, was during those Phoenix sieges, able to jump to the backline with that ultimate, and then Genetics able to hold down the front of the fight, making sure that anybody who did come to his backline was completely walled out.
And that's something you have to highlight as well, the fact that Genetics could act as a solo tank in those instances, because when Variety's up in the air, the Rat is not there soaking up damage. It's just the Ymir standing in front of everyone. But that's sort of what they did. Whenever Variety went up into the air, all the carries have to disperse. You can't just sit there and wait for it. You got to be like, oh, we got to try and move around, and then while that's happening, your Phoenixes are dying, and your whole team fight is being disrupted.
Yeah, and one of the things that we saw a lot during the picks and bans was kind of this priority on banning away this Khepri more than anything else, not wanting to let PBM have that one, or on the opposite end, PBM not wanting Genetics to be able to grab this pick. But finally, we do see that Khepri come out, and it just was not able to perform up to that level. And we do have an interview standing by for our postgame. It's actually going to be Genetics, the support for the Camelot Kings. First off, congrats on your win up against the Jade Dragons. Tell me a little bit about maybe the thought process kind of behind, in picks and bans of game 1 and 2, you guys are making sure that the Jade Dragons making sure that Khepri didn't make it through. You guys let him through in game number 3. Was that kind of just a bait pick for you guys?
Well, basically, Captain Tweed just kind of designed our entire draft, and we went from there. But yeah, Khepri is a really important thing for us, and so is Ymir, so just figuring out priorities, and then from the draft, you just go step by step, and it just ends up working out for us. Yeah,
talk to me a little about kind of the mental reset from game 1 to 2, kind of a harsh loss in game number 1, then game 2, you guys, Captain Twig especially, able to really make that bounce back. Talk about, a little bit about the talks with the teams in between those games.
The team wasn't too happy about game 1, but Captain Twig, he brought us back in mentally, and then game 2 and 3, we managed to pull it out.
Yeah, it seems you guys were able to kind of really make that bounce there. This is just week 1, obviously. Your first set of the day, your first set of the season, I should say, for phase 2. How does this kind of elevate you guys for the remainder of this phase? How does this one just kind of good startup kind of get you guys ready?
Yeah, I think it's really good. Like when you get a player like Captain Twig going, he's always he's on fire from week 1. So.
Well, there we go. As long as Captain Twig's on fire, it seems we'll see some success out of you guys. Congrats on your win. I'll let you get back with the team to celebrate. Thank you so much.
I'm not buying it.
What?
I bear to Genetics said before he left for the interview, I'm just going to throw this all on Twig. And he's laughing as he leaves. He knows that's exactly what it was. I mean, of course, Twig looked good in game number 2 and number 3, but I think Genetics is like, I'm just going to throw this all on Twig. And Twig was like, no, don't do it. But it was too late. He already left.
He's like, look, can we not just send Twig in for the interview? Twig's like, no, I was already there for the pregame interview. That's got to be somebody else this time. But Genetics and the team very excited about being able to find a win here on day number 1 of phase 2, a very important one. Let's take a look at the schedule to see what we still have in store for the rest of the week, because that was just game 1 of our entire weekend for the SPL, a full 7 sets that's going to go across the course of 3 days. At least for our first day, our first set is done with the win with the Kings over the Dragons 2-1, and then we'll round out our day with our second and final set of the SPL, and that will be the Oni Warriors and the Atlantis Leviathans facing off next. And weird for me to say this was the number 3 and number 6 seeds, respectively, when you look at the two teams on the actual board. The Oni Warriors had a pop-off phase 1 in the regular season. Atlantis Leviathans didn't quite have that same level of success. They actually ended up finding quite a few extra losses that teams weren't expecting. A very big upset by the Valkyries in phase number 1. I think this is a match that everybody's going to be keeping a lot of eyes on, Trelly.
Yeah, the Warriors have been looking very solid up until, even in that Masters tournament, they looked good. Obviously they weren't able to make it all the way to the finals, but the Leviathans have struggled to find their footing, I think would be a way to phrase it. They are still trying to figure out where they fit into this meta and how to play it the best way, and we'll have to see if they've done their homework while they were, watching those Masters tournaments.
We'll have to see if the Oni Warriors can keep up their popularity from phase 1. We will have to see if the Leviathans can pick it back up. All that and more will be ready to you right after this break.